Good morning, welcome to the programme. We've got some breaking news to bring you now, and it's about Ofgem, Wilf.
Which is why I was looking down at my phone there, my apologies. I thought we were out of shot for that headline, and I was just getting the numbers which were crossing. So this is the price cap, the annual energy price cap that'll be in place from April, and it is falling. The energy regulator, Ofgem, just giving the numbers, it's being cut to £1,641, a fall of 7% or a fall of £117 per year from April. It's sort of largely in line with expectations from the sort of few kind of trusted forecasters of this, because it's always quite kind of complicated how they come up with this. Obviously, it's good news. So the average energy bill likely to fall by about £10 per month or £117 per year from April. The slight sort of nuance to this good news is it's come out because of changes in the budget. So it's largely expected this, and that rather than some of these prices coming out of our energy bills, it's going to be captured from general taxation. So this fall, good news, though, isn't coming from some long-term structural change in policy that's delivered lower costs for everyone, or some fall in commodity prices, for example, that's given lower costs for everyone. It's just moving where this is paid for from energy bills to general taxation. That's largely seen as a good thing. It's more progressive because energy bills obviously affect people of all incomes equally, whereas if it's through general taxations, those with the broader shoulders will pay for it more. So a fall kind of in line with expectations, as outlined in the budget last year, £117 down.
Headline, you're going to be paying a little bit less for your energy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Donald Trump, shall we? Because he's used his State of the Union address to celebrate what he called a turnaround for the ages, projecting a message of economic success and a version of America that, in his words, is bigger, better, richer and stronger than before. But it is a turnaround that many Americans don't feel: rising costs, division over immigration. And so this was a speech that also attempted to shore up President Trump's popularity.
It was the longest State of the Union address in history. It lasted 1 hour and 48 minutes. It included several moments of protest by Democrats as well. Our US correspondent, James Matthews, has the story.
The second Trump presidency. It's been a wild ride. This was the car journey for the big set piece, to Congress for the State of the Union address.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
This is an occasion for a president to present his own report card to Republican acclaim, even if Democrat opponents marked him down by staying away. It showed in the empty seats. This was political theatre, fascinating in choreography and casting. Cue the Supreme Court justices who torpedoed Trump's policy on tariffs last week. There were handshakes for the judges he'd called disloyal and unpatriotic. Inside the chamber, the air chilled.
And then just 4 days ago, an unfortunate ruling from the United States Supreme Court. It just came down. It came down. Very unfortunate ruling.
Disruption came early. Democrat Al Green was escorted out, carrying a banner that read, "Black people aren't apes." He missed the president on vintage form, campaigning vintage in this, a midterm election year.
0 illegal aliens have been admitted to the United States. Drill, baby, drill. No tax on tips. We ended DEI. The state of our union is strong.
The US men's ice hockey team were a universal hit. Guests of the president. Populism with the politics. This is a president seemingly on the brink of attacking Iran.
They're working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America.
In a room listening for clues, there was a holding position.
They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon.
There was a standing ovation a minute in half the room. Democrats took it sitting down. In a picture of dissent, the president saw opportunity.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
He brought the Democrat benches to life with shouts of
Penalties for public officials.
"You have killed Americans."
Removal of criminal aliens.
We saw the videos too. "You are killing Americans." This was a State of the Union, the state of which we haven't seen before, in protest. This was close to Capitol Hill. Across town, they were closer to Hollywood. They dressed as frogs at an event called State of the Swamp. They heard from actor Robert De Niro.
I choke on that phrase, "we all love our country," because our country isn't so lovable right now.
Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein were present in the chamber. This was a news conference they held down the corridor in advance.
I do not stand alone. I represent hundreds of faceless, nameless survivors.
She may have left this earth, but her soul is still here.
Justice should never, ever expire. Release the damn files.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
This was an address to put wind in the sails of his Republican Party, heading towards the midterms. But the president did it with a poor rating in the polls. A State of the Union address is an occasion for a president to tell Americans where he's brought them and where he's taking them. Typically, it is a straightforward, staid affair. But these aren't typical times.
I think you should take the rest of the day off.
I think we have to. We're going to have to.
And this is no typical president. James Matthews, Sky News, in Washington.
Well, we're delighted that we can bring in Mark Stone to give us a further analysis. And Mark, particularly delighted not just because you've stayed up late for us, but I guess you've only just about had time to get here for us, because it must have only finished a few minutes ago at nearly 2 hours long, which maybe we'll get to the length of it in a moment. But first, I guess the broad tone, your assessment of it, because America, there's always politicisation, of course, but the State of the Union sometimes provides an opportunity for some moments of unity. Did we get any of that last night?
Yeah, I stayed up, guys, so you didn't have to. I watched it, so you didn't have to. It was like a feature-length film, except it was one man talking in the tones that we've all become so used to for a very, very long time. Did it provide unity? Of course it didn't. No, absolutely not. Look, I think there were two ways this speech could have gone. Either he was going to stick to auto cue, stick to the teleprompter, as they call it over here, and not veer off that, not weave as he likes to do, and therefore provide a pretty dull speech, which doesn't provide many news lines, but which ticks the boxes of his advisors. In other words, sticks to script, talks about affordability, talks about the issues that Americans are worried about. Either that, or he goes way off script and it feels a bit more like a rally, and it's more exciting, worthy of popcorn maybe, and lots of headlines, but not the speech the advisors wanted. This was the first of those. He stuck to script. There weren't many headlines. There was one, I thought, on foreign policy, on Iran. He didn't provide any suggestion of an immediate military action on Iran, but what he did do was almost provide the pretext for what might come, suggesting, kind of by surprise, that Iran has the ability to strike Europe. I mean, I didn't know that. I don't think many Iranian experts believe that Iran has the capability to strike outside the Middle East, and has almost got the capability, so he said, to strike America. That's very questionable, but it certainly suggests he's providing the pretext for what may come on Iran. But foreign policy, it took him an hour and 4 minutes to mention foreign policy. Much of the first hour, all of the first hour, was about domestic stuff, which is precisely what his advisors want him to talk about. Focus on the home front, because that's what people here care about. They don't want another foreign war.
And Mark, just picking up on that, on what people in the US want, because here in the UK, I feel like we kind of see people either hate Trump or they love Trump over in America. But how is he actually doing when it comes to the polls? You know, is he doing well? Is he doing badly? They've obviously got the eye on the midterms later.
Well, if you believe the polls, he's doing terribly. I mean, he has the worst polling worse than this time in his first presidency. I mean, record bad polling, if you believe what the polls are saying. I mean, obviously, people, as ever, are sceptical of polls and will dismiss them up until the moment of the real poll. And in this case, it is the midterms in November. All eyes are on that. I think this is kind of the moment, and the State of the Union is the moment where it's the sort of moment where the president likes to present his view of what America is like in his eyes. But it's clear, I think, that most Americans right now do not align with the president's views on things like affordability. They are struggling. And yet he is still blaming the Democrats who have been out of power really, well over a year now, coming up for 2 years, been out of power. Yet he's still blaming an economy that, yes, is doing better than many in Europe, but is still struggling. And he's blaming it on the Dems. That's something he really can't do any longer.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. Mark Stone, there reporting on the State of the Union address. Now, of course, we've been reporting this morning, we led on it at the beginning of the hour, on the new energy price cap by Ofgem, what that means for bills. One person who is across all of this, of course, is Ed Miliband, the Energy Security and Net Zero Secretary. Great to have you on. So we've got the new energy price cap. What does it mean for people's bills?
Well, look, this is good news for people. We know how much of an issue the cost of living crisis is for people and how much of an issue high energy bills are. Price cap coming down by £117 is going to make a difference to people. It's happening because of the actions we took in the budget, the Chancellor took in the budget to raise taxes on the wealthiest in order to help fund this bills cut. And it goes to what this government is all about, which is helping ordinary working people, not having a country just run for the wealthy and powerful anymore. But I also want to acknowledge something at the beginning, Sophie, which is we know we've got further to go. Further to go on the cost of living and further to go on bills.
Oh, what do you mean by that then? Where do
you want to
end up?
We want to drive them down further. We said at the election we wanted bills to be up to £300 lower by 2030.
So when you say £300 lower, £300 lower from what?
Well, look...
Because it's hard to kind of really quantify what that means.
Well, look, let me put it this way. The price cap in 2025 across the year was lower in real terms than 2024. We want to drive it down even lower, so it's up to £300.
But £300 lower than what?
Than it was in 2024.
And what was that?
Well, it's an average across the year. It's about £1,750 across the year.
So the average was £1,750. Yeah. You want to bring that down to, just doing my maths in my head, what, £1,400? That's the...
In real terms, we want it to be up to £300 lower. That was the promise that we made.
Than £1,750?
Than it was, yeah.
Okay, right, thank you. The other thing I want to talk to you about today is that Sky News has been out on the channel and we've witnessed tankers carrying Russian oil cruising past. 3 vessels, the Regale, the Hyperion and the Kusai. Despite all the sanctions, the shadow fleet is still operating, effectively funding, the war in Ukraine for Russia. Why aren't we doing more to stop that?
Well, we announced 4 years yesterday since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has affected families all around the country. Gas prices still 40% higher than they were before the invasion. We continue to act. We announced a new package of sanctions yesterday, including in relation to Russian oil companies, including in relation to the shadow fleet. The truth is, it's incredibly hard to clamp down on this, but believe me, Yvette Cooper, across government, Foreign Secretary, Chancellor, we are incredibly engaged on this, working with our European allies and indeed our US allies.
Because there's a couple of things to unpick here, but just specifically on the fact that these tankers are just kind of going around in the Channel and the North Sea. Surely that is
I'll look at the details of your report, but as I say, we are taking actions with our allies on the shadow fleet.
What actions are we taking? I know we had the one raid that happened, but that was a while ago, and they're still going.
Well, I'm not going to go into operational details of exactly what we're doing, but I can assure you we're taking action. And look, we are having an effect on Russia's ill-gotten gains from using energy policy as a weapon of war because of the price cap that we've applied and a range of other measures. But we take this incredibly seriously across government. And as I say, the way this is most effective is across the G7, across the EU and with the US. And that's something we continue to work on.
Yeah, that is true, right? Because we can stop buying
Exactly.
as much oil and gas as we want.
Exactly.
But if other EU countries are still buying it, which they are, China, India, there's only so much that we can do, right?
And this is something that the Prime Minister, I know, kind of raised with Prime Minister Modi when he was in India, and again, we're working with our US allies to try and make a difference on that as well. So,
are you frustrated with the EU countries who are still getting energy from Russia?
Look, to be fair to our EU allies, they were incredibly dependent on Russian gas, right? And now, actually, they've reduced a lot of their dependence on Russian gas at speed. But there's further to go. I acknowledge there's further to go.
Are you frustrated?
No, I'm not going to say that. I'm saying we're working with our European allies on this.
You say there about the reliance on Russian energy. Denmark has moved to protect energy security by extending oil and gas production in the North Sea by a decade. Is that something that we should be doing as well?
Well, we've taken a pragmatic and I believe the right approach on the North Sea, which is to say we're not going to issue licenses to explore new fields in the North Sea, but we want existing oil and gas fields to exist for their lifetime, to be kept open for their lifetime. And we announced in our North Sea plan last autumn that we were going to have so-called tiebacks to help make that happen. But just as a bigger picture here, which is we as a country don't get energy security from fossil fuels. It's really important, this, because however much drilling we do in the North Sea, it doesn't lower energy bills by 1 penny. The only way, because the price is set on the international market, the only way we get energy security is with our mission for homegrown clean power. So there'll be some people who come on your programme and say, look, the answer is we've got to, if we only drilled, we'd lower bills. They're 100% wrong, and the last government used to admit that too.
I'm just talking about the security.
Sure.
And if you look at energy, Denmark, for example, Denmark's energy and climate minister, the war in Ukraine has shown that energy is a weapon in the wrong hands, as you've acknowledged. There is no way around an energy-independent Europe that produces the energy we need ourselves. If Denmark can contribute to Europe's energy supply, then we must do so, even though we want to be climate neutral by 2045. You can see the argument here. Should we not be following suit?
Well, we continue to use oil and gas to get oil and gas from the North Sea for decades to come. And the truth is that
there's no reassessment of that, of the new licences. That policy is set.
Well, yes,
what we've seen.
Absolutely on the new exploration licences, because frankly it won't make much of a difference anyway. But as I say, we took a pragmatic approach last November in what we did, and I think actually the Danes were changing a different part of the policy landscape. But look, I just do go to this point. The best way we get energy security is through homegrown, clean power we control. When I talk to my European counterparts, as I did a meeting in Hamburg a few weeks ago, they agree. They're driving forward with... It's important to get this picture across the world, in fact. So many countries now recognise the only way... If we're dependent on fossil fuels, we're subject to petrostates and dictators like Putin who control these markets. The only way through is with nuclear renewables that we control.
Just finally, is AI going to put our climate targets at risk?
No, but the decisions we make on AI, data centres and so on, we are making on the basis of an overall approach to energy security and tackling the climate crisis. And it's very important it's within that framework.
Because they do use a lot of natural resources, right? Water, energy, all that kind of thing. Look, it's going to have an impact, right?
It can have an impact, but look, potentially it can use some of the abundant resources. Take, for example, Scotland. If we can put some AI data centres in Scotland, as our plan is, where there's lots of abundant renewables, wind and so on, it can actually help our energy system. But this is the whole point about having an energy system that is properly designed to do that, and that's what we're doing. OK, Ed Miliband, thank you very much indeed. Ed Miliband speaking to us there.
Now, Peter Mandelson's lawyers have said his arrest was prompted by baseless claims that he was a flight risk. Sky News understands the police had been told he was preparing to leave for the Virgin Islands.
So his lawyers say that he'd already agreed to attend a voluntary interview in 2 weeks' time. Let's pause and give you the statement in full. This from Peter Mandelson's lawyers. They say Peter Mandelson was arrested yesterday, despite an agreement with the police, that he would attend an interview next month on a voluntary basis.
The arrest was prompted by a baseless suggestion that he was planning to leave the country and take up permanent residence abroad. There's absolutely no truth whatsoever in any such suggestion. We have asked the MPS for evidence relied upon to justify the arrest.
And then they go on to say Peter Mandelson's overriding priority is to cooperate with the police investigation, as he has done throughout this process, and to clear his name.
Our political correspondent Lucy McDade is here to tell us a little bit more about the ongoing kind of political fallout of all of this.
Yeah, yesterday it was a bit of a bombshell, actually, this statement, and it came as there were discussions about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor in the Commons. So you kind of had two big developments in this unravelling story yesterday. Of course, you talk about the political consequences. I mean, this is another day, another morning where we aren't talking about... I mean, Sophie, you were just talking to Ed Miliband there, and you were talking about what he wants to announce today. But actually, the large conversation will be, I'm sure, about Peter Mandelson, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Keir Starmer is fighting a by-election in Gorton and Denton tomorrow. He will want the discussion to be about government policy. It hasn't been. This all centres around Peter Mandelson and his arrest, and this statement yesterday where they said there were these baseless claims that came forward that he was planning to flee to the British Virgin Islands. He says they're not true. Yesterday, though, was a significant moment in the House of Commons. You had the Lib Dems pressurising the government to release these documents relating to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and his appointment as a trade envoy. The government chose not to block that, and actually it was Labour ministers in the House of Commons that were really quite powerful speaking about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Sir Chris Bryant said that he was rude, arrogant and entitled. So you have the government saying that these documents will be released. Again, you talk about the political consequences. This story is just going to keep unravelling. And I think that's what the problem is for Keir Starmer, no matter what the outcome of these criminal investigations. It's just development after development. We've got documents relating to Mandelson's appointment coming out, and now Andrew as well.
And you've got Prime Minister questions as well, right? So it feels like that's going to be another potential pressure point for the Prime Minister.
And I feel like we say every single week that there are... Kemi Badenoch can kind of stand in front of a table with a number of options of which she can go at Keir Starmer. And I think today she's got that again, whether she chooses to go on Mandelson, Epstein, what was discussed in the Commons yesterday, whether she decides to talk about student loans, which is what she's really going hard on at the moment. It'll be interesting to see what she picks. But again, she's got plenty to choose from.
Lucy, great stuff. Thanks so much. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, Lucy's first appearance, by the way, on Mornings.
Very happy to be here.
Yes, good to have you.
If you've been here for years.
Now, we talked in recent weeks about so-called shadow fleet, so we're just discussing that with the Minister as well. Tankers that move sanctioned goods around the world. And Sky News can reveal that sanctioned Russian oil is being transported just miles from British shores.
There's a growing number of blacklisted oil tankers in the English Channel, which our team has been tracking. And Paul Kelso has this report for us.
These are the secret weapons in Russia's war on Ukraine, hiding in plain sight. We've been tracking sanctioned tankers carrying the oil that funds the Kremlin to intercept them here, less than 10 miles from Dover. This is the Shadow Fleet on our shores.
So that's us, and we're heading... That's it. So that's us in the top corner, and we're heading into the shipping lane now.
We've been tracking 3 tankers for days to intercept them here.
There it is there, Rigel.
That's the first of
This is the first of the Russian tankers, and that's coming down the shipping lane. We'll stop here near the sandbank, and then it'll come past us.
Right on schedule, the first comes into range.
So this is the Rigel. It's part of the Shadow tanker fleet. It's come from Primorsk in the Baltic, a Russian port loaded with about 1 million barrels of oil. That's worth $55 million, roughly, at today's prices. It's sailing under a Cameroon flag, but it's sanctioned by the UK, the EU and other countries because they believe it is essentially funding Russia's war in Ukraine. The proceeds of that cargo ultimately will flow back to Moscow. The Rigel is one of 3 tankers we've been tracking since early February, each sailing under a different flag and loaded at different Baltic ports, but all carrying Russian oil through the Straits of Dover.
French Navy, French Navy.
In January, French special forces seized a tanker sailing from Russia in the Mediterranean, and US forces have seized at least 7 since its crackdown on Venezuela. But despite the almost daily passage of sanctioned ships through the Channel, including this, the Kusai, British intervention has largely involved checking documents.
This is a message from the United Kingdom's Maritime and Coast Guard Agency.
We overhear a message to its captain from the Coast Guard. They doubt the ship has valid insurance and want proof.
Please email with a copy of your civil liability certificate and or blue card within 24 hours of this request.
The Ministry of Defence says this is part of its robust response to Russia, but with around 800 vessels in the Shadow Fleet, pressure is growing for direct action.
Britain and its allies, we won't do this alone. We'll do it particularly with the Dutch and the Danes and the Norwegians and the seagoing nations of Northern Europe. They together, I think, will get much tougher with these Russian ships, even if they're escorted. And when that happens, I think we're heading probably sometime this year for some sort of militarised confrontation at sea.
The UK government says deterring, disrupting and degrading the Russian Shadow Fleet is a priority. But for now, the oil that greases Russia's war machine continues to flow, not in the shadows, but under our nose. Paul Kelso, Sky News in the English Channel.
Really incredible stuff that from Paul Kelso. The full report, well worth watching. QR code on your screen right now. And Paul will be joining us next hour. Or is it in the 9? Someone tell me quickly. Next hour. It is next hour. Next hour. We look forward to that and we'll chat to him.
We've got mysterious voices in our ears, if you're wondering. It wasn't like a kind of visitation from God.
The weird thing is when those mysterious voices stay with you throughout the weekend as well.
Yeah, that's when you've got to worry, right? Now, we love this next story because we are a big fan of Snoop Dogg, specifically Snoop Dogg at sports events. The US rapper has shown up to watch his first Swansea City match since becoming co-owner.
He's not normally, but he's become wildly famous at the Olympics of late, both at the most recent Summer Olympics, where he became a kind of star. He was there as one of the ambassadors ahead of the coming up next Summer Olympics in LA. Everyone adored it, everyone had a lot of time for it, so they sent him, and he was big presence at the Winter Olympics recently. Swansea City FC is a different one. He's an investor.
Yeah, exactly. He's an investor. So look at and how the fans are responding to it as well. They're all given these kind of free towels before kickoff, which is a very US sport import. It's not something you usually see here in Swansea City.
It's quite helpful in Swansea. I'm sure there's a spot of rain. Have a towel.
Yeah, true. And I guess, with someone like Snoop Dogg, they'll be hoping to sort of do a Wrexham, right? And, to have that kind of injection of money as well, and also focus on their team. I think they're currently, 14th in the Championship?
Well, and they just played Wrexham and beat them.
There you go.
In 2-1, because obviously they're both in the Championship. Wrexham have come from lower down to get there since this new investor group has taken over Swansea. They're already in the Championship. Some other high-profile members of this group, Martha Stewart, who's fantastic, legendary, US TV personality and business leader. And then on top of that, Luka Modric, I was just reading in the investor group, so the former Spurs player, former Real Madrid legend, who's still playing as well.
Genuinely, I have to say, it is quite difficult looking at all this as a Sheffield Wednesday supporter.
I know, I
have to say, it is,
But we're all in it for this. We just need to get...
I know.
I've just thought of it. You should be the celebrity ambassador for Sheffield Wednesday.
Maybe that's your tweet. Hand out the free towels.
Towels for the Owls?
Towels for the Owls, Wilf.
Thanks very much.
That's what
I'm
we
here
need.
all week.
That's what we need. Lots more still to come. We're going to be looking at the all-important political event that is happening
can't we keep
tomorrow.
talking about Snoop?
In the break.
Okay.
After the break, we're going to be talking about that by-election
I'd love Snoop to join
up.
us. Can we arrange that?
I mean, well, if you've got his number, then, give it a go. We're going to be talking
Might actually
political
be happening. I'm working on it.
By-elections next.
No joke. Watch this space.
Well, hello, and thank you for watching tonight on The Wrap. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
He did know what he was doing.
Both agree on that, can we?
No.
Can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Hello again. Let's bring you some news this morning. Thank you for being with us. We're talking about by-elections next, because tomorrow is a pretty big day in politics, the Gorton and Denton by-election, and it is a test of not only Labour but also Reform's popularity and power.
You remember that it's a seat that Andy Burnham wanted to be allowed to run for but was blocked by Labour. It's a big factor in what's going on and what the reaction to the result might mean.
Yeah, so it's the final day of campaigning there, and our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has spent the last few days in the area to really try and get a bit of a sense of where it's going. It's hard to call.
180-mile trek north from Westminster. Party leaders and cabinet ministers have been out in force, touring the streets of one South Manchester suburb.
Chaotic.
You only get all these here when a by-election really matters. It's been Labour around here for almost a century, but is voters moving from the centre and an increasingly divided constituency the reason some are less willing to engage?
Excuse me, madam, can I talk to you about the election? And can we talk to you about the election?
Sorry.
Can we talk to you about the election?
Oh, sorry.
But those that did chat were angry.
I've never not voted before, ever, but really disillusioned this time.
I voted, well, at first I voted for Labour, but then obviously, you know, things change.
Green. And why is that?
Because of Palestine.
Labour will win, inshallah. Why not?
For many years, the Labour name was enough to unite the disparate forces round here. But is this still true?
Gorton and Denton is a constituency split in half. Look at this. In Gorton, in the west, there are more ethnic minority voters. To the east, in Denton, there are more white voters and, look at this, voters over 60. But here's the thing, there are twice as many voters in Gorton as there are in Denton, making it a bigger challenge for reform.
We did find passion for reform in this pub.
Could you report that perfect, isn't it?
Watching United play.
I'm not a racist person or nothing like that, but I think it's getting a bit out of control, the country that I live in, that I was brought up in.
Because the country's going down the drain, it's as simple as that.
What do you want politicians to sort out?
Well, get out of the bubble and see what the real world's like. They keep telling us that the cost of living's not going up. Well, everybody knows it is. You only have to go in the supermarket to find that out.
The question asked on the other side of the room is which party is best placed to beat Reform UK?
I'd vote for Labour if it meant, if I thought that was the solid vote to stop Reform getting in, I'd vote Labour.
Do you think the Greens have a serious and realistic chance of winning on Thursday?
Yes, I think they've really galvanised a vote on the left side of politics in this country, one that is more about humanity and common decency.
If Andy Burnham had been the Labour candidate, would that have made a difference?
I'd have voted for him, definitely.
In this central Manchester Convention Centre, we will get the by-election result in the early hours of Friday morning, and it will be read as a verdict on the Prime Minister. He was the person that blocked a standout Labour candidate, Andy Burnham, so voters will be going to the polls on the basis of his record instead. Is Keir Starmer the right person to navigate this era of three-party politics?
This dance studio gearing up for polling day, a by-election causing disruption here as well as in Westminster.
So the council have just dropped this off this afternoon. We lift all of the mats and turn it into a voting station.
The result, a sign of whether there's more turmoil to come. Sam Coates, Sky News, Gorton and Denton.
I've been itching to get there. as you know, Will, for a while, because it's such a close one to call that it's like a three-way seat now, which is astonishing given where you think it is. And you only really get the sense, I think, when you get up there, and I think Sam really kind of explored that in that piece.
I think he captured it so well, and as you say, it's always difficult going into a by-election because the polling's much harder on individual things, but also very rare. You have a genuine sort of three-horse race in one of these. Makes it even harder to predict. It's going to be really exciting as it all unfolds overnight, Thursday. Jonathan Samuels was rehearsing in here yesterday, and all the team, of course, have all that coverage for you.
Yeah, and also it's like, you know, people are seeing it as a test for Keir Starmer, which it is, but it's also, you know, a test for, I think, the Green Party under Zach Polansky, Reform under Nigel Farage. You know, how can they convert, if they can, improve poll ratings into actual votes in an election?
You kind of think of it as more of a opportunity to shine for the Greens and a test for Starmer and Farage.
I think that's
There's probably
fair.
more to lose for based on where expectations have been for Labour and for Reform, and more to gain potentially for the Greens. But it's going to be a great one to watch. Now, there are many people standing, of course, not just those three parties that we've focused on. Here are all of the candidates for you on your screen right now. And, of course, a reminder, the results will start coming in the early hours of Friday morning, voting tomorrow.
Now let's talk about passports now, because there's a change coming into effect today that's going to affect an awful lot of people, especially if you're a Brit living abroad.
So from today, British dual nationals will no longer be able to enter the UK using their foreign passport.
So what's happening today is the introduction of what's known as the Electronic Travel Authorisation Scheme. So in other words, if you're a visitor entering Britain, you're going to need an ETA, which means, for lots of people, a British passport as well. So to board a flight, train or ferry, if you're a dual national, you need a valid British passport or a certificate of entitlement. That costs about £600. If you're a dual national living abroad and you haven't got a British passport, or if it's expired, you're going to be denied entry. So in particular, I think people are thinking if you're a child that's born abroad to British parents, you might not have a British passport yet. Before, you could have used your non-British passport. That right is going to expire. And this is all part of the attempt to make things more digital. So British citizens who already have a certificate of entitlement are going to receive a new digital version of that that's going to have to be linked to your foreign passport. It's all part of the government's, I guess, attempts to kind of digitise the passport system. But I have to say, like, there is quite a lot of confusion that's been caused by this.
Lots of confusion. I mean, I personally, until about 4 hours ago, was still pretty confused about it, as you said, when we were going into it. And again, that key point that suddenly getting a passport is it's not a cheap thing to do, but it's not an easy or quick thing to do, and that's why people particularly been caught unawares on it.
If you have been caught, let us know as well. mornings@sky.uk is the email address, and later in the programme we're going to be talking to some people who are running into problems as well.
Now, good news for people's pockets this morning. Energy bills will fall by £117 from April for households who use electricity and gas.
We can talk now to the consumer finance specialist, Sarah Pennells. Good to have you on board.
Thank you.
So we've got the government's perspective this morning, who are all saying this is absolutely brilliant news, cost of living, etc., etc., etc. How much of a big deal is it?
Well, it is good news in the sense, I mean, I rarely do good news stories when I'm talking about money over the last couple of years. So it is good news that bills are going to be going down. For people on the standard tariff, and that's about 2/3 of households that have energy bills, so by £10 a month, roughly, from April. So, yes, that is good news. I think if you sort of cast your eye back, though, to kind of 2 years ago in April, energy bills are actually back pretty much to where they were then. So about £50 a year less from this April compared to 2 years ago. Now, last year, of course, we had awful April where all those bills went up, and it was really tough for households. So, yes, I mean, £10 a month is not to be sniffed at when we have ongoing high costs. But, you know, we have had cheaper energy in the not-too-distant past.
I guess it's also fair to point out that this reduction in energy bills will pop up for certain people elsewhere. That this isn't a win-win because gas prices have fallen globally. It's a change in the way that the Chancellor's collecting the money to fund this, which is more progressive, but it's not just an outright win for all people.
Yeah, so the main reason that we have got this fall in the energy price cap is, as was being explained earlier on, that the Chancellor announced in November that there would be £150 off our bills. So this £150 fall applies to people on a fixed tariff as well. It's just they're not covered by the energy price cap. But as you say, the reason the Chancellor gave us the £150 off the energy bills is because those green subsidies that previously were paid for or charged to customers of energy companies, they're being rejigged, but they're also being charged through general taxation. As you say, I mean, what that does mean is that those who pay more tax, generally it's those who earn more, will pay more. Whereas if you're paying through your energy bills, we know that lower income households pay a bigger proportion of their money on energy. So from that sense, it is more progressive.
So what's the advice for people listening today? If you're hearing this news, a bit of a fall, there's a cap, what should you do? Is this a good time to be shopping around to try and change your provider? What's the best
I think there's
advice?
three things. First of all, if you're on the standard tariff and you don't have a smart meter, take a meter reading on or before March the 31st, so you're not charged that higher rate for energy you use in April onwards.
Oh, that's a good one. So take the meter reading before...
So basically before April the 1st,
Right.
so March 31st or earlier. Secondly, if you're paying by direct debit monthly and you're in credit, then see if you can either pay less if you're on the standard tariff or ask for that credit back. And it is a good time to look around for a new deal because, I was looking at deals yesterday, there are some on offer now that are actually just a bit cheaper than the tariff that's coming in from April. Over the coming weeks, we'll see more, probably competitive deals. The last thing, if you pay by standard credit, which in English means you pay the bill when it arrives, you will currently, when the cap comes in, be paying £10 a month more than those who pay by direct debit. Not everybody wants to pay by direct debit, but if you can switch, it will save you £10 a month instantly.
Can I just ask more broadly in terms of the environment at the moment? We've got another Bank of England meeting next month. People were expecting a few more cuts this year, but they didn't necessarily expect one as early as March. That's now starting to be expected, that we might get another interest rate cut next month. Is that fair?
Yeah, I also think that predicting interest rate cuts can be a bit of a dangerous game. But it does, as you say, it does look like the narrative is changing. And also, when we look at what was happening last time, it was quite a sort of split decision. It wasn't that everybody was saying, no, let's keep rates as they were. So I think expectation is rising a bit more that there may be a rate cut, also fuelled by what happened to the inflation figures that we had recently.
Yeah, on inflation as well, because it was really interesting when we were listening to Sam's piece from Gorton. I thought you had lots of people in the pub saying that their number one issue was the cost of living. And they were saying, look, people keep telling us that it's all fine. Well, it's not fine. You go to the supermarket and things are really expensive, like we're not idiots sort of thing. Well, what is the kind of reality when it comes to the cost of living?
We're not in the cost of living crisis that we were in a couple of years ago when prices were rocketing away. But it isn't that generally prices have fallen. It's just they're not rising as sharply. And we've sort of got used to it. It's not the shock it was in February 2022 when energy prices were really sort of spiralling. But people aren't finding that they've got all this money sort of sloshing around. And we've been following how people have been coping with the cost of living since February 2022. And people are telling us that, yes, some people's finances are improving, but a lot of people are still telling us that they are having to make tough choices about everyday spending and they don't have much money left over at the end of the month to get their finances back in a better state. One of the figures that has been consistently low, that's sort of quite worrying, 1 in 5 people tell us they've got less than £100 in savings. Now, that hasn't shifted over the last couple of years, and that means they've got no buffer if costs rise.
Yeah. Less than £100
in savings. 1 in 5 adults.
So, if your kind of car breaks down, if you get any kind of crisis, then you're in trouble.
If you're in that situation, you've got no financial resilience, you are quite vulnerable, and it just takes, as you say, something unexpected to mean that you could have to resort to expensive borrowing.
Really interesting.
Sarah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. Right, let's have a look at the weather quickly.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
The mild theme will continue this week with rain and strong winds, though, still present at times. It's wet in the north and the west at the moment. The mainly dry south has some fog and it's quite dense in places. That fog will lift this morning and there'll be some brightness for central and eastern England, which will be best in the southeast. The rest of the UK will be rather cloudy with further rain, most persistent over Scotland and Northern Ireland. Meanwhile, Ireland will turn more showery by lunchtime. It'll be even milder than recently with a high of 18 Celsius possible in the sunny southeast.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
So it was the longest State of the Union address in history, partly because of all the rounds of applause that Donald Trump got from his supporters, but there were plenty of detractors too. We're going to be analysing the latest from the States. That's next.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna.
We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing. We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
Well, hello, and thank you for watching tonight on The Wrap. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
He did know what he was doing.
Both agree on that, can we?
No.
No. You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Welcome back. Donald Trump was on confident form at the State of the Union last night as he held what he calls the golden age of America. Let's get into it and discuss it with Amy Tarkanian, a Republican strategist and former Nevada State Grand Old Party chairwoman. Thanks so much for joining us, Amy. Good to see you. I guess my first question is the extent to which you thought he delivered and stepped up to the plate, despite, or maybe you would say, because of the length of the speech. It was the longest in history.
Well, that wasn't a surprise. He definitely likes to take as much time as possible when he's at a mic. And so here in Vegas, where I live, you can go ahead and place your bets over or under. And I think everyone was pretty much on the same side of saying it's going to go over. Well, I think he did actually perform very well. He was very energetic the entire time. State of the Union address historically helps re-energize your base and hopefully tries to reassure those that are in the middle or are faltering or a little unsure at that point in your presidency. He was lower and struggling somewhat in his favorability polling. And then I'm sure starting tomorrow, we'll start to see the polls come in. He'll see a little bit of an uptick. And that's normal, no matter which president is in office at the time. And so that's really what a State of the Union is. It's to tell the public a screenshot of where we are, everything that's been accomplished, and then where we're going. And I think he did a decent job at that.
An hour and 50-minute screenshot, I guess, if you will. Let's touch on some of those polls and the likely kind of reaction to the polls from the speech, which is, I guess, the topic of immigration was what I wanted to come to, because clearly that very much divided the audience in person there whenever he spoke about immigration. Has it been one of the issues that has hurt him in those polls you referenced that have worsened in the last couple of months? Do you think, therefore, the polls will improve when he focused on that topic or not?
Yes, I do think it will improve. And it's unfortunate because what took place is while he campaigned for his second administration, he was very focused as making sure that security, border security, minimizing illegal border crossings were going to be at the top of his list. And that's definitely, he came through on those list of promises. However, we had a couple of unfortunate situations where there were citizens that were unhappy with the way that Department of Homeland Security officers were handling some of these illegal immigrants that were being captured, and they unfortunately lost their lives in the altercations. And so that was a huge situation where the president had to step in, bring in some further assistance to sort of navigate and oversee areas where they needed to have reformation take place, dealing with local law enforcement and federal law enforcement. And so now that I think that he has done that, and hopefully by tonight's speech, he's maybe reaffirmed and brought some more comfort maybe to some of those who were feeling uneasy about how these situations were being mishandled and mismanaged. Yep. It very well could have given him a slight bump.
Well, we shall see the reaction to it in the coming days. Certainly been a divisive issue of late. Amy, just finally, I guess the other kind of interesting potential news topic out of it was will he or won't he take action in Iran? What was your interpretation of what he said and the likely steps now the State of the Union is behind him?
Sure. Well, he's not going to give away the detailed plans, obviously, but I think the fact that he at least touched on it, and he did reiterate multiple times that, America comes first and that we are a country of strength, and he's not going to allow other countries such as Iran, go ahead and carry nuclear weapons. And so I think his words were very firm. Once again, he's not going to give us what the plans are, but I would hope that we're not going to go to war. But this has been going on for decades where Iran has not followed through with their promises and have continued to build and test behind closed doors. So we now have a president who doesn't mince words, and he follows through. So it's in their hands if they really want the United States of America to follow through with what the president would have no problem doing.
Amy, thanks so much for staying up late for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Amy Tarkanian there, joining us from Vegas following the President's State of the Union.
Yeah, interesting to get some of those thoughts with her. And we're going to be getting more thoughts on the State of the Union address in the next hour with our US correspondent too. Pretty divisive speech. And we'll continue coverage in reaction to the change in the Ofgem price cap on energy prices and further analysis ahead of the Gorton and Denton by-election tomorrow. Don't go nowhere, we'll be right back.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what? Historic day here today
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Good morning, it is 8 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilfred, very good morning from me as well. Lots ahead.
Annual energy bills are set to fall significantly and the Energy Secretary tells us the latest drop won't be the last.
Donald Trump hails economic success and attacks Democrats in the longest ever State of the Union address.
You've seen nothing yet. We're going to do better and better and better. This is the golden age of America.
Sky News tracks blacklisted oil tankers in the English Channel as they transport sanctioned Russian oil just miles from our shores.
Also today, major changes at passport control. We'll tell you how dual nationals will be affected.
And that is Snoop Dogg. He's firing up the crowds at Swansea City Football Club. It's his first visit as co-owner.
Very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. Well, families can expect cheaper energy bills from April after Ofgem announced a drop in the price cap.
So the energy regulator says average households will pay £1,641 a year. That is a saving of £117. We spoke a little earlier to the Energy Secretary at Miliband, who told us that bills are going to keep going down.
We want to drive them down further. We said at the election we wanted bills to be up to £300 lower by 2030.
So when you say £300 lower, £300 lower from what?
Well, look...
Because it's hard to kind of really quantify what that means.
Well look, let me put it this way. The price cap in 2025 across the year was lower in real terms than 2024. We want to drive it down even lower, so it's up to £300.
£300 lower than what?
Than it was in 2024.
And what was that?
Well, it's an average across the year. It's about £1,750 across the year.
So the average was £1,750. Yeah. You want to bring that down to, just doing my maths in my head, what, £1,400? That's the...
In real terms, we want it to be up to £300 lower. That was the promise that we made.
Than £1,750.
Than it was, yeah.
I mean, obviously down 7%, down £117 or so it'll be about £10 a month for most people. As we were discussing earlier, that isn't from something transformational that means everybody wins. The cost largely reduction is coming from a change in the budget, and it's coming out of energy bills to general taxation. So it isn't a win-win just because commodity prices have fallen or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's a fairer win. It's a progressive win by shifting it to general taxation.
And I think, you know, energy bills, as lots of people, lots of you will, you know, really attest to, it's been painfully high over the last few years. So we need some good news, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Good news.
I think the point, though, is it's a smallish reduction, decent reduction, but not huge. But it doesn't necessarily mean we're on a new trend where it'll fall again next month. It's a sort of one-off shift on how it's paid based on the budget. And then I get it every 3 months, I think. Next time around, it'll be more of a case of what are the fundamentals showing for the long term after this like one-off mini win.
Let's talk about Donald Trump next, shall we? Because he's used his State of the Union address to celebrate what he called a turnaround for the ages. He had a message of economic success, a version of America that is bigger, better, richer and stronger. But look, many people in the US aren't feeling that turnaround, rising costs and division over immigration. So in many ways, I think it was a speech that was an attempt to kind of shore up the president's popularity as well.
It was the longest State of the Union in history. It was an hour and 50 minutes and included several moments of protest from Democrats. Here is James Matthews with the story.
The second Trump presidency. It's been a wild ride. This was the car journey for the big set piece to Congress for the State of the Union address.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
This is an occasion for a president to present his own report card to Republican acclaim, even if Democrat opponents marked him down by staying away. It showed in the empty seat. This was political theatre, fascinating in choreography and casting. Cue the Supreme Court justices who torpedoed Trump's policy on tariffs last week. There were handshakes for the judges he'd called disloyal and unpatriotic. Inside the chamber, the air chilled.
And then just 4 days ago, an unfortunate ruling from the United States Supreme Court. It just came down. It came down. Very unfortunate ruling.
Disruption came early. Democrat Al Green was escorted out, carrying a banner that read, "Black people aren't apes." He missed the president on vintage form, campaigning vintage in this, a midterm election year.
0 illegal aliens have been admitted to the United States. Drill, baby, drill. No tax on tips. We ended DEI. The state of our union is strong.
The US men's ice hockey team were a universal hit. Guests of the president. Populism with the politics. This is a president seemingly on the brink of attacking Iran.
They're working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America.
In a room listening for clues, there was a holding position.
They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon.
There was a standing ovation a minute in half the room. Democrats took it sitting down. In a picture of dissent, the president saw opportunity.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
He brought the Democrat benches to life with shouts of,
penalties for public officials.
"You have killed Americans."
The removal of criminal aliens.
We saw the videos too. "You are killing Americans." This was a State of the Union, the state of which we haven't seen before, in protest. This was close to Capitol Hill. Across town, they were closer to Hollywood. They dressed as frogs at an event called State of the Swamp. And they heard from actor Robert De Niro.
I choke on that phrase, we all love our country, because our country isn't so lovable right now.
Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein were present in the chamber. This was a news conference they held down the corridor in advance.
I do not stand alone. I represent hundreds of faceless, nameless survivors.
She may have left this earth, but her soul is still here.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
This was an address to put wind in the sails of his Republican Party, heading towards the midterms. But the president did it with a poor rating in the polls. A State of the Union address is an occasion for a president to tell Americans where he's brought them and where he's taking them. Typically, it is a straightforward, staid affair. But these aren't typical times.
I think you should take the rest of the day off.
I think we have to. We're going to have to.
And this is no typical president. James Matthews, Sky News, in Washington.
Let's bring in Mark Stone. Mark, I love that classic James Matthews understatement at the end of that piece. This is no typical president. What did you make of the State of the Union address?
Well, I could tell you there's plenty more of that from James in the podcast, which we've just finished recording. So that should be published shortly wherever you get your podcasts. We've tried to dissect the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of classic Trump stuff, wasn't it? You know, there was a time when presidents, and I remember covering the Biden State of the Union addresses, he would disappear for the few days beforehand up to Camp David, where he and his team would mold the speech, and it would be a big set piece where he would be presenting his vision for America, for the American people. That really, I don't think we really got that this time. This felt to me much more like a sort of rally speech, but it was a rally speech. It felt like a campaign speech that was scripted, and I think that was an important takeaway. There were two ways this could have gone. Either it would be Trump being Trump, and actually when he is at his best as a communicator is when he's off script and when he's kind of jostling with the crowd and having fun with it. But that's when he goes off message and when the advisors get nervous. They, I think, wanted to keep him on message, and the message is affordability. The message is the home front. And he did do that. He stuck to the auto cue, the teleprompter, throughout the speech pretty much. And it was a whole hour, Sophie, before he mentioned foreign policy. So although foreign policy has been such a dominant part of his presidency, second presidency so far, it took him an hour to talk about it. And I think that's telling. It's because he is being told by those around him, if you want to do well or not do badly in the midterms, which are just a few months away in November, you need to talk about what people care about. And that is their back pocket. That's kitchen table issues. It's affordability. And so we've seen in the past few months that he's almost been like reluctant to talk about affordability. It felt forced. It didn't feel forced in this speech. It felt like he finally, kind of the penny had dropped. He needs to talk about this stuff. And so he did. And it was an hour before there was any sort of headlines on issues of foreign policy.
Mark, what about the topic of immigration? Because it's always a divisive issue. It's been particularly divisive in the last couple of months. He had dialed down his rhetoric over the last few weeks, sort of forced to do so, and to some extent his tactics. How did it play out last night?
Well, lots on immigration. He was sort of goading the Democrats on the issue of immigration. I mean, it is without question his yes, most controversial, but also most successful, the most successful strand of his presidency so far, because the southern border, which was objectively chaos, that border between America and Mexico was objectively chaos under the Biden presidency, and it is now not. I mean, there are, he says, no illegal crossings right now. I'm sure 1 or 2 people are getting across, but 1 or 2 is a fraction of what was happening under the Biden administration. That is a clear policy success that he could and should own, and he is. But he's gone all that much further with all we've seen with ICE, the immigration agency in places like Minneapolis, where we've reported from. He's basically saying, look, I did nothing wrong there. That was the right thing to do. But he's also tweaked the policy. And he's goading the Democrats. At one point, he said to the chamber, he said, stand up if you agree that looking after Americans is more important than looking after foreign aliens. I'm paraphrasing, but that's effectively what he said. He knew that the Democrats would get all in a fluster about what they should do there. And sure enough, they did. And loads of them didn't stand up, which then allowed him to say, you guys are crazy. How can you not stand up and applaud the fact that Americans are more important than those coming to America? It was easy for him. It was kind of an easy hit, and he won on that one. Look, just very briefly, I do think foreign policy was interesting. It was an hour in, but there was very little mention of Ukraine, that issue, that war he said he could solve in a day. There was very little on Russia, none of it of any substance. I thought that was telling for the lack of substance. A little bit on China, very little though. That was fascinating. This is he's off to Beijing in a few months' time, a few weeks' time. Very little on that. And then on Iran, this suggestion that he believes Iran has the capability already with missiles to hit Europe. Really? That's new, if it's true, and soon will have the ability to hit the United States. That is creating the pretext for what he might do with that armada that he currently has in the Middle East.
We've heard that before. What, about 22 years ago? Can we dig into that more? Maybe not. Mark?
Yep.
Lovely stuff. Thank you very much, Mark Stone, particularly for staying up late for us. You know, I think he did stay up just for us that second hour, not his podcast. He happened to also do his podcast, which you must listen to. Subscribe by scanning the QR code on your screen right now, Trump 100. James Matthews, Martha Kellner, Mark Stone, always summing up all you need to know from the US.
Now, a big part of why Russia, frankly, has been able to continue the war in Ukraine is that it is still able to transport and sell and receive oil and gas through these so-called shadow fleets, so tankers that move sanctioned goods around the world. And now Sky News can reveal that sanctioned Russian oil is being transported just miles from British shores.
There's a growing number of blacklisted oil tankers in the English Channel, which our team has been tracking. Paul Kelso has been doing a deep dive on it. Here's a taste of it.
On a misty February morning in Dover, we're heading into the English Channel to see if we can find a secret weapon in Russia's war against Ukraine hiding in plain sight.
Over 400 ships a day come down through the shipping lanes. Yeah. But when you see these Russian ships like that and these oil tankers, you know, it's a regular occurrence, to be honest. No one really takes any notice of it.
So supposedly in the shadows, but they're not really, are they?
Not really, no. I mean, they're only 6 miles from the coast.
Matt usually takes fishing trips on the Porsche. We're after a bigger catch. Sanctioned tankers carrying Russian oil just a few miles from the White Cliffs. The Shadow Fleet on our shores.
There it is there, Rigel.
That's the first of the tankers.
This is the first of the Russian tankers, and that's coming down the shipping lane. We'll stop here near the sandbank, and then it'll come past us.
Right on schedule, the first comes into range.
So this is the Rigel. It's part of the Shadow tanker fleet. It's come from Primorsk in the Baltic, a Russian port loaded with about 1 million barrels of oil. That's worth $55 million, roughly, at today's prices. It's sailing under a Cameroon flag, but it's sanctioned by the UK, the EU and other countries because they believe it is essentially funding Russia's war in Ukraine. The proceeds of that cargo ultimately will flow back to Moscow.
Paul's here. Paul, this report has slightly blown my mind because obviously on paper we know that the shadow fleet is operating. But what, you just got a boat in Dover, went out and found them?
Yeah, I think we thought that was one of the points of doing this, is just to demonstrate actually how relatively easy, notwithstanding a pretty choppy day at sea, it is to see these vessels pretty much daily, dozens of times a month, boats in this shadow fleet, enormous tankers carrying tens of millions of dollars worth of oil that will flow back to the Kremlin, are going back and forth because they're coming from the Baltic, Russia's Baltic ports, and the quickest route, if they're heading to the Suez Canal, to head to Asia, which is one of the likeliest places they're heading, you come through the Channel. And they're under the noses, not just of the British, who have sanctioned this oil and these tankers, but also EU coastal nations. They passed the Germans, the Dutch and the French by the time they passed us. And it poses it's a direct challenge to the willingness to act against these vessels, which, remember, they're sanctioned, which prevents Western nations, essentially, either Western tankers transporting this oil or doing business, buying this oil, but it doesn't stop Russia selling it elsewhere. And it's heading largely to China and India, but it is a daily challenge, and at the moment, it doesn't look like we're doing very much.
Why don't we do more? Is it a sense of not wanting to provoke Russia in a grander scale, or are we...
There's legal and practical challenges. The legal challenges are that while it seems remarkable that this is revenue for the war in Ukraine, let's remember that, can pass through our waters, it's not illegal. Ships, any vessel has the right of innocent passage. Now, define innocent in the context of sanctioned oil. And the UK has been struggling and working on trying to work out what the legal basis is for seizing these tankers. Now, the US, we've seen, the stakes have been upped, right? The US has seized tankers linked to Maduro.
Near us.
Very near us, one in the North Sea, with RAF support, actually. The French seized one earlier this month down in the Mediterranean. The Ministry of Defence tells me they are robust, but the most robust thing we saw while we were out there, one of the interesting things, we overheard, all the shortwave radio transmissions, you can hear the Coast Guard. And we overheard a message to one of those tankers we were tracking, asking them to email their insurance documents within 24 hours, which did sound like something of a bureaucratic response.
Well, I mean, there's one response, which is to sound like some people, you know, these international laws seem at times over the top, bureaucratic, whatever, that we can't stop a Russian oil tanker in that regard. The other point, which it does make you think of, if the US has been doing some of this, including near us, briefly landing the troops that did it at our RAF base, I think is what you're alluding to for the UK involvement. It comes back to one of the points that the US is very annoyed about as it regards to Russia-Ukraine, to say, look, you guys step up to the plate and do more before we do. And there is, when you see this example, you can't argue with it.
Well, there's definitely some power in it, and it's interesting. I mean, President Zelensky, in his speech in Davos last month, he put this right at the top of that speech. If the US can seize tankers, why can't we stop the shadow fleet? He said it yesterday in his address to mark the 4th anniversary of the invasion. Boris Johnson said it, who's been a long-standing supporter of Ukraine. So it is rising up the agenda. There's no question the British are thinking more seriously about it with their seagoing allies. If you think of the allies I ran through, there's another challenge. So you seize a tanker, then what do you do with it? These vessels are 20 years old, they're enormous, they can cost hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Take on your oil if you're Donald Trump.
Well, exactly
like,
right.
yeah, thank you very
keep
much.
Them somewhere. But that's the argument. Well, let's take the oil. But it's the same that bumps into the same.
Knock 350 quid off people's bills.
Yeah, exactly.
Seizing all that those frozen assets. You know, if we care about the rule of law, in contrast to the Kremlin, then can you do it? But the point is, it is a daily affront to the claim that we are taking really robust action to see these boats flowing, and they continue to flow.
And worth saying as well, Ed Miliband, you know, when we had him on, said that he would look at your report as well and look at the details in it. Excellent. There's definitely a bit of frustration in it too.
Conveniently hadn't watched it yet, but, you know.
It's a busy day.
Off-gem
preparing to talk to you.
Yeah. But Paul, great stuff. Thanks so much. And by the way, we obviously just gave you a taste of that report. Make sure you watch the full thing. Scan the QR code on your screen right now. Very compelling from Paul.
Now, whenever we talk about student loans on this programme, we get an extraordinary response. It's obviously something that people feel very, very strongly about it. There's been a bit of a political response too, because Kevin Badenoch is now promising to cut the amount of interest paid on some student loan debts if she wins power.
She has proposed scrapping real interest on Plan 2 loans, saying that for those who started university from 2012 until 2023, the people that fell into that loan pool have been hit by something that feels like a scam.
I graduated 6 years ago, and when I graduated, I had just shy of £43,000 of debt, and I checked yesterday and I've now got £57,000. I'm paying a few £100s a month towards mine, but I checked last financial year I paid over £4,000 in debt. In interest, so the amount I owe is just going up and up and up.
The interest being scrapped completely is a key way to make it more fair, because again, the people who could pay this upfront and had wealthy families didn't incur any of this extra money. And also I think the cost of tuition is just far too high.
Those were a couple of students we spoke to last month, I think it was, talking about how, you know, they took out a loan and because of the interest, it's actually, despite the repayments they've been making, they now owe more money than when they started.
And this was the chart, by the way, that we showed you last month when we started covering it. It shows the disparity between the amount of interest payments on student loans are being made and the amount spent on the loans themselves. This essentially shows that from 2022 onwards, the amount of interest earned, the red bars, shot up relative to the amount people were managing to pay down on their loans, and really kind of highlighted how unfair this cohort of student loans has been. Let's speak to Professor Adam Tickell, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Birmingham. Thanks so much for joining us on this all-important topic. The first kind of broad question is, do you think students over the last decade or two have been wronged?
Well, it's a really complex thing. So as a society, and good morning, as a society, we've made a series of decisions. I think some of those decisions have been taken without a full debate and without us really thinking about it. So the number of students going to university has massively increased, particularly since the coalition government reduced the cap. And the quid pro quo for that was that the amount of fees that people paid, that students paid, went up from £3,000 to £9,000, shifting the balance from the government paying the majority of the fee to the student paying the majority of fees. So there's been a big series of changes, and we collectively, as a country, have almost fallen into a state where students now have to pay a large amount of money, and lots of them are finding it really genuinely unfair.
Yeah, you say there about how students are feeling it. What's your own experience? Because you must talk to students all the time, every day, right? And how are they managing?
Well, the big challenge for students when they're students is not the concern about paying it off at the end. It's really about the cost of living pressures they face while they are students. Because the truth is that although we've got middle class students who have a lot of support from their parents, many students in most universities get a maintenance grant that is a bit less than the cost of living. So they either incur further debt or more frequently actually work. So they feel a whole series of pressures from not having enough money when they're actually studying. The loan in many respects is a kind of graduate tax, and it's a very high graduate tax given that the threshold for repayment is so low. So the students we talk to are more concerned about actually making the bills, paying the bills on a day-to-day basis than they are about their graduation.
Professor, I guess that phrase graduate tax really lands when we look at the chart we just showed, the stories that we recounted. It might not land, or it might feel less unfair, less prohibitive if there was just no interest paid. So you still have to repay the cost of the tuition that you've got, that someone that chooses not to go to university hasn't got. But if there's no interest paid on that loan, it wouldn't seem so unfair. I mean, that goes beyond what even Kemi Badenoch is proposing. Do you think that would be a way forward or not?
It could be, but these things are really... I'm an academic, so apologies, but these things are really complex. So, my own take would be the government could reasonably charge the rate of interest that they're paying, because if they're charging less than that or no interest at all, then clearly that's quite a lot of charge on the public purse. But the bigger question is, there are so many students going to university that in some way we as a society probably need to think about what we want from university. So do we want as many universities? Do we want as many students? Do we want the current way of paying for it? Do we want, as we do in the UK, universities to provide mental health support, career support, accommodation and so on. Because if you go to France or Germany, then universities just provide education.
I'm really interested
in
that.
And it's cheaper for that reason.
I'm interested in that final point that you just made there about what we want from universities. The Conservatives are saying as part of their plan as well that we need to be seriously thinking about reducing the number of courses, and that you can tell which courses at which institutions effectively don't help people get jobs at the end of the day, like they're not value for money in that sense. Do you agree with that? I think there's a genuine debate here. You know, creative arts, for example. Should we be funding creative arts if it means that people will struggle to get jobs later in life? Or actually, as a country, do we need to value things like creative arts despite that? What's your own view?
So my view is that university isn't simply about getting a job. And there are all sorts of things about growing up that young people do when they go to university. But clearly, a lot of people do think of it as an investment. So it's not an unreasonable thing to think about whether some programmes are adding the value that people want. The thing that will surprise most of your viewers is that the fastest growing university over the last decade is a university called BPP, which most people will never have heard of, which is effectively a private equity backed university providing a very low cost to them education, but for the same kinds of things. And we don't know anything about that. We don't know what their graduate outcomes look like. We don't know what their entry rates look like, because they're not a university in the sense that most of the rest of us are.
That's interesting. We should try and dig a bit more on that. So.
Very interesting. The kind of added question I had is how much you guys are struggling to provide the services you're struggling. I mean, you know, one of the other arguments always comes up is should tuition fees be abolished or come down, and universities be forced to cut their costs as some of that process. Would you be able to compete in that regard? Because I guess you're also competing on the international stage.
Well, speaking for my own university, yes, we can. But what's happened over the last decade and 15 years is there's been a real market grown in the university system. And so we've reached a state where now about 40% of universities in England are in deficit, and that's not a sustainable position. And it is a real problem, because we lose money teaching at home, teaching students from the UK. We lose money doing the research that we do, so we only make money through teaching international students, and that is not a long-term sustainable position. And clearly that plays into concerns about immigration and all sorts of things. So I do think it's time, 15 years since we last looked at it, to have a full and comprehensive look at the whole system, and that would be best if it was cross-party.
Professor Tickell, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to take you to Swansea next, who had a little bit of kind of Hollywood glitz at the football match recently. The US rapper Snoop Dogg showing up to watch his first ever Swansea City match since becoming co-owner of the club.
And he requested that the crowd would be in their seats ahead of kickoff to 12 free towels, as you can see in these pictures, which is something you do often see in American sports stadiums. And they all seriously got into it. And so Snoop Dogg is one of the new co-owners of Swansea. A lot of the kind of Hollywood kind of change that you've seen. American investment, you know, Tom Brady obviously invested in Birmingham. I've forgotten his name, invested in Wrexham.
They've all watched
Ryan Reynolds.
They've all watched the Wrexham documentary, and they all want to get in on the act, is what's happening.
Yeah,
right?
but I'm fully behind it, because I just think it's fantastic. I guess it's tricky for those clubs that haven't got that kind of backing. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, so I have to, honestly, it's a bit galling. I'm not going to lie.
And then just for the context as well, Snoop Dogg obviously kind of 2.5 years ago burst onto the sporting scene as he went to the Paris Olympics as an ambassador ahead of the LA Olympics, which is next, and he just went so viral by showing up at all. You know, he was dressed up as a show jumper for one of them. It was fantastic. That they then sent him to the Winter Olympics again as an ambassador ahead of the LA Olympics.
Not just an ambassador. He was like a kind of honorary coach.
Yeah,
so is he going to be doing that at Swansea? Is my question.
No, he's
is he
starting
be
up front
there
in the next game.
Exactly. Exactly. Bit of coaching going on. We'll have to see.
We're there for it. Martha Stewart's part of the investment team, as is Luka Modric.
Other championship clubs available for any American investors
But
who
you've
would
just
like
got a new buy, haven't you? Or has it not gone through?
It's a whole other story. We've got to move on, sadly.
Okay.
Up next, we're going to be discussing the government's Chagos deal, which has drawn criticism at home and abroad. We'll be discussing that next.
We'll be right back.
Well, hello, and thank you for watching tonight on The Wrap. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why. He did know what he was doing. Both agree on that, can we?
No.
No. Can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report. And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. The government has defended the decision to hand control of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius as being vital for UK and US security. President Donald Trump previously supported the deal, but has recently described it as a mistake. Well, joining us now is the journalist and former special advisor, Ben Judah, who was working for David Lammy until about a month ago, during the period of time he was Foreign Secretary, and has written very detailedly about the Chagos Islands issue over the weekend. First, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I guess we all know that there's a lot of national security involved with this decision, and so there's always been some limit to what people can say about it. You're still limited to what was national security, but you can talk about it a bit more than certainly when you were working for David Lammy.
Sure. Well, first thing to say is that
what's happening at that base in Diego Garcia, which is the main atoll in the Chagos Islands, is so crucial, so important and so vital for British national security that it's under the Official Secrets Act. So I can't tell you what it does, and that's frustrating, of course, in trying to explain the deal. But once you know what it does, you understand the British state's logic of we have to remain involved there at all cost.
So this is what I thought was most striking to me about your article, is it's not just a case of doing something that the US is content with and that perhaps ticks all the boxes of international law. Your article, to me, suggested there was a route that might have just seen the US do a deal that cut us out of that. You kind of implied that...
100%. So let me kind of explain a little bit about how we ended up in the Chagos conundrum. You've got to go back to decolonisation, when the United States looked at the map of the globe, wanted to establish a super base doing incredibly important and vital stuff, and saw that the Brits were leaving some atolls in the middle of the Indian Ocean, which was administered as part of a colony run from Mauritius. Mauritius is far away, but still, that particular colony had covered the Chagos Islands. The Americans went to the Brits, we're going to do something there that you'd never be able to afford to do on your own. You'll never be able to build it on your own. But if you carve off this territory from Mauritius, you stay and you call it a British overseas territory and you remove the native population for us, we will let you fly a British flag over it and have a tiny amount of troops there that will give you access to this superpower. That's what the UK did. It went to Mauritius and did a deal with Mauritius, which included saying that the territory would go to Mauritius when it was no longer needed for defence purposes. Cut to the present. What worked for the United States then, having the colonial power stay, had stopped working by the time that the previous Conservative government was in power and then the Labour Party came into power. The terms of that deal were seen by Mauritius as really unfair. They'd run a campaign for international institutions through the UN, through the ICJ, and they'd had it deemed unlawful in ICJ advisory opinion. The Americans were looking at that base and thinking, ooh, we've got a problem here. Now, let me explain to you what that problem is, which is everything would be a lot easier if there was just one atoll with this super base called Diego Garcia. But actually, there are about 1,000 atolls, a vast swath of territory, and a lot of those outer atolls are hard to defend and hard to police. The Americans started to become worried that Mauritius, if it didn't do a deal with Britain, could just walk away from the West and then, with the full force of international law behind it and the rest of the world viewing this as illegal, invite China into those outlying atolls, making the whole base insecure. So they started putting huge pressure on first the Tories, then Labour, to do a deal, and Britain started to become aware that they might do a deal with Mauritius, cutting Britain out, handing over this territory that we consider a British overseas territory to Mauritius, and then we would lose access to those superpowers.
I mean, such interesting context. Obviously, a lot of this also started not just when the different government was in place here, but a different government in the US. Talk to me about what's happened in the last couple of months. Obviously, the new US administration agreed with what was happening and then didn't. Why do you think that's changed?
Well, what has happened is the Labour government wanted to make sure that the Trump administration backed the deal, waited to proceed until it had taken the deal through a highly, highly extensive interagency process, getting that Pentagon tick, getting that CIA tick, getting everybody behind it. And those big institutions of American power backed it, and they felt that they had a deal with Donald Trump. What's happened since is that the global right has been playing politics and has mounted a highly emotional campaign against losing territory, handing over territory, and it's got President Trump, who sees himself as the leader of the global right and is very sensitive to that.
I guess the potential pushback on that or question on that is there hasn't, I think I'm right in saying, been any legal, whether Mauritius law or international law or whatever, decision yet that makes the other atolls in play for China. And is it fair to say that that could be resisted by the power that's there, America, even if we move to that direction? Or is that a sort of short-sighted perspective?
So there are two things to say. The first is that, you know, the United Kingdom could theoretically ignore all of these international law rulings. It could withdraw, it could...
Have there been any rulings yet, though?
So there's been an ICJ advisory opinion, which has been backed up by the UN General Assembly, where our European allies have also stood behind Mauritius, and the UK has been very isolated. And then there have been rulings that have led us to believe that a binding judgment will be coming over this territory, which will lead to real problems. But the main problem is that Mauritius could walk away from the West, go on the global market and invite China into those outlying atolls, fully backed up by the weight of international opinion, and then we would have to start defending it. We don't have the resources to put a British frogman on every single one of those 1,000 atolls, so we would have to ask the Americans to do it. Democrats absolutely didn't want to do it. The Deputy Secretary of State, Kurt Campbell, at the time, told me personally the only way Britain could hurt America would not be to do the deal.
That's a really interesting perspective from that former Biden administration perspective. Just finally on this, is the deal done? I mean, what do you expect to happen now? Obviously, it hasn't been ratified by Parliament. Are we bound by it?
So, to use hospital terminology, I don't think the deal is quite not for resus, but I think the deal is best placed on ice for the moment. I think all of the logic of British national interest and, yes, American national interest will lead back to some sort of deal in due course. Whether that's in a few months or in a few years, I'm not sure. That all plays into the politics of Donald Trump and what he wants to do, and we know that he is a master of being mercurial.
Ben, really interesting. Thanks so much for joining us. And again, just to reference his op-ed in the Sunday Times covering all of this. Ben Judder, thanks so much.
Fascinating, really interesting on such a hot topic in politics. Well, look, tomorrow is a big day in politics, of course, as well, because it is the Gorton and Denton by-election, and this is one of, I think, the hardest elections to call that I can remember, frankly. It's a test of Keir Starmer, of course, but it's also a test of reform. And you remember, it is also the seat that Andy Burnham wanted to run for too, but was blocked by Labour. So will that decision cost him the seat?
It's the final day of campaigning, voting tomorrow. Sam Coates has been in Gorton and Denton for us and sent us this report.
180-mile trek north from Westminster. Party leaders and cabinet ministers have been out in force, touring the streets of one South Manchester suburb.
Chaotic.
You only get all these here when a by-election really matters. It's been Labour around here for almost a century, but is voters moving from the centre and an increasingly divided constituency the reason some are less willing to engage?
Excuse me, madam, can I talk to you about the election? And can we talk to you about the election?
Sorry.
Can we talk to you about the election?
Oh, sorry.
But those that did chat were angry.
I've never not voted before, ever, but really disillusioned this time.
I voted, well, at first I voted for Labour, but then obviously, things change.
Green. And why is that?
Because of Palestine.
Labour will win, inshallah. Why not?
For many years, the Labour name was enough to unite the disparate forces round here. But is this still true?
Gorton and Denton is a constituency split in half. Look at this. In Gorton, in the west, there are more ethnic minority voters. To the east, in Denton, there are more white voters and, look at this, voters over 60. But here's the thing. There are twice as many voters in Gorton as there are in Denton, making it a bigger challenge for reform.
We did find passion for reform in this pub.
Could you have poured that perfect, isn't it?
Watching United play.
I'm not a racist person or nothing like that, but I think it's getting a bit out of control, the country that I live in, that I was brought up in.
Because the country's going down the drain, it's as simple as that.
What do you want politicians to sort out?
Well, get out of the bubble and see what the real world's like. They keep telling us that the cost of living's not going up. Well, everybody knows it is. You only have to go in the supermarket to find that out.
The question asked on the other side of the room is which party is best placed to beat Reform UK?
I'd vote for Labour if it meant, if I thought that was the solid vote to stop Reform getting in, I'd vote Labour.
Do you think the Greens have a serious and realistic chance of winning on Thursday?
Yes, I think they've really galvanised a vote on the left side of politics in this country, one that is more about humanity and common decency.
If Andy Burnham had been the Labour candidate, would that have made a difference?
I'd have voted for him, definitely.
In this central Manchester Convention Centre, we will get the by-election result in the early hours of Friday morning, and it will be read as a verdict on the Prime Minister. He was the person that blocked a standout Labour candidate, Andy Burnham, so voters will be going to the polls on the basis of his record instead. Is Keir Starmer the right person to navigate this era of three-party politics? This dance studio gearing up for polling day, a by-election causing disruption here as well as in Westminster.
So the council have just dropped this off this afternoon. We lift all of the mats and turn it into a voting station.
The result, a sign of whether there's more turmoil to come. Sam Coates, Sky News, Gordon and Denton.
Really, really insightful report there from Sam. A reminder that there are, of course, many candidates running tomorrow in the Gorton and Denton by-election. Their names and parties are on the screen for you now. The election tomorrow, overnight coverage from 10 p.m. tomorrow into the early hours of Friday morning, of course, on Sky News with Jonathan Samuel.
Now, the real breaking news we're all here for is there has been some sunshine. So let's have a look at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
The mild theme will continue this week. In other words, it's going to keep being quite warm, but there will be some rain and strong winds at times. It's wet in the north and west right now. The mainly dry south has some fog, which is locally dense, but that fog will lift this morning and there will be some brightness for central and eastern England. It will be best in the southeast. The rest of the UK, though, I'm afraid to say, is going to be pretty cloudy with some further rain, most persistent over Scotland and Northern Ireland. Ireland is going to turn more showery by lunchtime and it will be even milder than recently, a high of 18 degrees Celsius possible in the sunny southeast.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
When we come back, we're going to be talking about a confusing change to the rules around passports, specifically for dual nationals. It's left a lot of people stranded, in fact. We'll be talking about it next.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna.
We are in the heart of Nairobi and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
Well, hello and thank you for watching. Tonight on The Wrap, we will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why. He did know what he was doing.
Both agree on that, can we?
No.
No.
You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable?
What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Just to update you with the latest on the Peter Mandelson story, because his lawyers have now come out to say that his arrest on Monday was prompted by what they call baseless claims that he was a flight risk. Sky News understands that police have been told he was preparing to leave for the British Virgin Islands.
His lawyers say he'd already agreed to attend a voluntary interview in 2 weeks' time. Our political correspondent Lucy McDade is back to bring us up to speed on all the latest. Lucy.
Yeah, as you say, this was quite an extraordinary development in this ongoing story yesterday. And as you say, Sky sources have corroborated that statement, that very angry statement from Peter Mandelson's lawyers, that Scotland Yard had agreed to interview Peter Mandelson under caution, not for another week or two, because they say these investigations are particularly long, complex. And then this all changed apparently on Monday when police got wind of this claim. He was apparently planning to flee the country. He, of course, says that is completely untrue, and a kind of, in a way, maybe that helps explain this arrest that we saw on Monday. It was public, broad daylight, cameras captured it all, and of course we didn't necessarily see that happen with Andrew. So, yeah, he's completely denying it, but an extraordinary moment yesterday, and this case will continue, I think, to keep unravelling.
Yeah, not least, of course, because Keir Starmer's got Prime Minister's questions yet later. I'm sure we'll see a few questions around this as well.
Lucy, thanks.
Well, let's talk about passports now, because there's a change coming into effect today that's going to affect lots of people, especially if you're a Brit living abroad.
From today, British dual nationals will no longer be able to enter the UK using their foreign passport. Let's get more on this from Adele. Adele, it's pretty confusing, this. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so basically, as you said, this is the ETA scheme that comes into force today. This is the border system going in the UK digital, effectively. And it basically means that visitors who are coming from non-visa countries, such as the US, Canada and France, will have to apply online for permission for one of these ETAs before they travel. It costs £16, it lasts for 2 years, and in most cases it's approved in just a few minutes. Now, as you said there is an issue, potentially, if you're a dual national and you've only just found out, because British dual nationals can no longer enter the UK using only a foreign passport, which is what they'd been able to do before. They must travel on a valid British passport or hold what's known as a certificate of entitlement, which costs about, well, over £580. So it's a straightforward system. But if you've only just found out about it as a dual national, then this isn't necessarily good news, because if you don't have the right paperwork, you simply won't be getting on a plane or a train or a ferry. And one of the key changes as part of this ETA scheme is that airlines are now legally required to check passengers for the digital permission to travel before boarding. So if you turn up without it, you won't fly effectively. It was introduced in 2023, but it was not strictly enforced. It was only in November of last year. The government said that it was going to be coming into force today, and politically there have been questions about communication on this. The ABTA trade organisation in the UK and the Liberal Democrats say there needs to be a grace period for dual nationals. They've described haphazard communication and a lack of planning, and the warning, of course, is that if dual nationals, they risk being stranded effectively if they don't have the right up-to-date passports or this certificate of entitlement. And many of them that we've heard about have only just heard out about these changes. Some of them say only from the press within the last week. And as we know, it can take months to get a passport. We've heard of people on honeymoons that may be having to cut their trip short, unable to visit dying relatives in the UK, for example. I mean, overall, it does bring the UK in line with other countries such as the US and their ESTA system. And the EU is going to be introducing something called the ETIAS system as well. So the idea of the new system is about streamlining immigration and speeding it up and making the country more secure, but it certainly has far less flexibility, and that's where the issue comes for dual nationals.
Adele, thanks so much.
Right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and squeeze in this story because I do want to do it before the end of the hour. We don't have long, but this is brilliant. So, chimpanzees. You probably don't want them to be operating heavy machinery, but they wouldn't be allowed to anyway. Do you know why?
Because they're drunk.
Because they're drunk. They'd fail the sobriety test. So this is a study showing that chimps in the forests of Uganda regularly eat enough naturally occurring alcohol from fermented fruit that they register levels that would actually, cause disciplinary action.
And what I love about this is it's triggered a write-up of the drunken monkey hypothesis, which suggests that that's where we've got our own love of alcohol from, because in years past we also got drunk as chimpanzees, and rather than letting it ferment in our belly, we just drink it.
And it was a sign of someone who had access to lots of food. So it was, great evolutionary.
We'll see you next hour.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
Sophy and Wilf, good morning from me as well. Busy hour ahead.
Annual energy bills are set to fall significantly, and the Energy Secretary tells us the latest drop won't be the last.
Donald Trump praises economic success and attacks the Democrats in the longest ever State of the Union address.
You've seen nothing yet. We're going to do better and better and better. This is the golden age of America.
Tracks blacklisted oil tankers in the English Channel as they transport sanctioned Russian oil just miles from our shores.
We're also looking at major changes at passport control, and we'll tell you how dual nationals in particular will be affected.
And the scale of the UK's fly tipping crisis, the government releases new figures this hour. We'll look at the worst affected areas.
Hello, welcome to the programme. So families can expect cheaper energy bills from April, is after Ofgem announced a drop in the price cap. So, yeah.
The energy regulator says average households will pay £1,641 a year, saving £117. Speaking to the programme in the last hour, Ed Miliband promised bills will fall further.
We want to drive them down further. We said at the election we wanted bills to be up to £300 lower by 2030.
So when you say £300 lower, £300 lower from what?
Well, look...
Because it's hard to kind of really quantify what that means.
Well, look, let me put it this way. The price cap in 2025 across the year was lower in real terms than 2024. We want to drive it down even lower, so it's up to £300.
But £300 lower than what?
Than it was in 2024.
And what was that?
Well, it's an average across the year. It's about £1,750 across the year.
So the average was £1,750. Yeah. You want to bring that down to, just doing my maths in my head, what, £1,400? That's the...
In real terms, we want it to be up to £300 lower. That was the promise that we made.
Than £1,750.
Than it was, yeah.
So look, it is good news, and I think it's worth, reflecting. We also get bashed in the media a lot for not telling good news stories, and a fall in bills is good, but it should be said, as we've been emphasising throughout the programme, that this is funded through effectively taxation, right? So this is government policy changes rather than a big overall trend of international prices coming down. Yeah,
and therefore kind of bigger tests will be when we get the updates later in the year. Are they repeated for different kind of long-lasting reasons as opposed to this one-off one post the budget last year? Now, stateside, Donald Trump has used his State of the Union address to celebrate what he called a turnaround for the ages, projecting a message of economic success and a version of America that is bigger, better, richer and stronger, in his words, than before. But it's a turnaround that many Americans aren't feeling, with rising costs and rising divisions over immigration's, of course, an important year ahead with the midterms to come.
It was also the longest ever State of the Union address. It lasted an hour and 48 minutes. Can you imagine speaking for that long?
I reckon I could do it.
You reckon you could? Also, it was helped, I guess, because there was so much applause from all the Republicans as well.
Which would feel nice.
Yeah, lots of...
Any applause, guys?
Lots of applause.
None. One. Andrew!
Got a bit from Andrew as well on the team. Here's our US correspondent, James Matthews,
reluctantly,
with the story.
The second Trump presidency. It's been a wild ride. This was the car journey for the big set piece, to Congress for the State of the Union address.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
This is an occasion for a president to present his own report card to Republican acclaim, even if Democrat opponents marked him down by staying away. It showed in the empty seat. This was political theatre, fascinating in choreography and casting. Cue the Supreme Court justices who torpedoed Trump's policy on tariffs last week. There were handshakes for the judges he'd called disloyal and unpatriotic. Inside the chamber, the air chilled.
And then just 4 days ago, an unfortunate ruling from the United States Supreme Court. It just came down. It came down. Very unfortunate ruling.
Disruption came early. Democrat Al Green was escorted out, carrying a banner that read, "Black people aren't apes." He missed the president on vintage form, campaigning vintage in this, a midterm election year.
0 illegal aliens have been admitted to the United States. Drill, baby, drill. No tax on tips. We ended DEI. The state of our union is strong.
The US men's ice hockey team were a universal hit. Guests of the president. Populism with the politics. This is a president seemingly on the brink of attacking Iran.
They're working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America.
In a room listening for clues, there was a holding position.
They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon.
There was a standing ovation a minute in half the room. Democrats took it sitting down. In a picture of dissent, the president saw opportunity.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
He brought the Democrat benches to life with shouts of,
penalties for public officials.
"You have killed Americans."
The removal of criminal aliens.
We saw the videos too. "You are killing Americans." This was a State of the Union, the state of which we haven't seen before, in protest. This was close to Capitol Hill. Across town, they were closer to Hollywood. They dressed as frogs at an event called State of the Swamp. They heard from actor Robert De Niro.
I choke on that phrase, "we all love our country," because our country isn't so lovable right now.
Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein were present in the chamber. This was a news conference they held down the corridor in advance.
I do not stand alone. I represent hundreds of faceless, nameless survivors.
She may have left this earth, but her soul is still here.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
This was an address to put wind in the sails of his Republican Party, heading towards the midterms. But the president did it with a poor rating in the polls. A State of the Union address is an occasion for a president to tell Americans where he's brought them and where he's taking them. Typically, it is a straightforward, staid affair. But these aren't typical times.
I think you should take the rest of the day off.
I think we have to. We're going to have to.
And this is no typical president. James Matthews, Sky News in Washington.
And for more reaction to the State of the Union, make sure to subscribe and listen to Trump 100. James and Mark, Martha and the team staying up late to record that. Well worth checking it out.
Now, we're going to talk next about shadow fleet, which is basically tankers that move sanctioned goods around the world. And this is a huge issue when it comes to Russian oil, effectively funding, the war effort. But Sky News can reveal that it's been transported just miles from British shores.
A growing number of blacklisted oil tankers are in the English Channel, which our team has been tracking down. Paul Kelso filed this report.
On a misty February morning in Dover, we're heading into the English Channel to see if we can find a secret weapon in Russia's war against Ukraine hiding in plain sight.
Over 400 ships a day come down through the shipping lanes. Yeah. But when you see these Russian ships like that and these oil tankers, it's a regular occurrence, to be honest. No one really takes any notice of it.
So supposedly in the shadows, but they're not really, are they?
Not really, no. I mean, they're only 6 miles from the coast.
Matt usually takes fishing trips on the Porsche. We're after a bigger catch. Sanctioned tankers carrying Russian oil just a few miles from the White Cliffs. The Shadow Fleet on our shores.
There it is there, Rigel.
That's the first of
this
the tankers.
Is the first of the Russian tankers, and that's coming down the shipping lane. We'll stop here near the sandbank, and then it'll come past us.
Right on schedule, the first comes into range.
So this is the Rigel. It's part of the Shadow tanker fleet. It's come from Primorsk in the Baltic, a Russian port loaded with about 1 million barrels of oil. That's worth $55 million, roughly, at today's prices. It's sailing under a Cameroon flag, but it's sanctioned by the UK, the EU and other countries because they believe it is essentially funding Russia's war in Ukraine. The proceeds of that cargo ultimately will flow back to Moscow.
Just the most extraordinary piece of footage. I guess lots of people, including me, will be asking, if you can just get on a boat and go out and find them, why doesn't the government do anything, the same thing?
Yeah, and it's sort of what occurred to me when we were looking at we talked a lot about the Shadow Fleet all around the world, essentially moving sanctioned oil, countries that are facing sanctions, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, until recently, use these boats. Sanctions are placed on them to stop them. And it was amazing how, notwithstanding a morning on a rising swell, it was easy to see them. I mean, we heard from the captain of our fishing boat there. He said you see them every day, sometimes accompanied by Russian naval vessels. The challenge that the UK government says they have is, first of all, the legal basis, because these ships are sanctioned, right? That means British companies can't do business with them. British ports can't take them. Same in the EU. Several of these boats are also sanctioned by the US. So they're cut out of the Western financial system. That's not stopping China and India and Turkey, to a degree, buying this oil. So if you're going to step in and actually stop them, as the US has done, and this has raised the stakes for the UK, the United States has seized around 10 tankers since it tightened the squeeze on Venezuela in December. The French seized one earlier this month. But once you're going to need a legal basis, because they're allowed, ships are allowed, if they are sailing innocently, they're allowed to go through international waters. Once you've seized them, you've got to put them somewhere. I mean, trying to seize them in the middle of the channel, it's so narrow there, you probably have to do it in the North Sea. Then you've got to store them. People will say, take the oil, use that to pay for it. But Britain's also, wants to be seen to, the rule of law is one of the things that separates us. So one thing it should say is that while the MOD, the action we saw when we were out there amounted to the Coast Guard radioing one of those boats, one of those vessels, and asking to see its insurance. A lot of the time the insurance is iffy, I'll put it that way, on these boats. And so they're requesting documents, which feels really bureaucratic compared to, special forces helicoptering onto the deck, as we've seen the French do. So they say that is robust, but they're talking about doing more. They're looking at the legal basis.
It's kind of crazy
whether it actually happens.
Even if, obviously, we want to respect international law in a way that Russia hasn't done so, that when your ally is at war illegally and we impose sanctions, that you don't have a sort of temporary sort of break from some of these rules. Do you know what I mean? It's quite striking.
We saw yesterday.
You're highlighting it for us.
We saw yesterday, as European leaders in Kiev, we hear strong language consistently from Downing Street throughout this war, and it's passing right under not just our nose, but the Dutch, the Germans, the French. These boats are within sight of their coast as well. I mean, it should be said that on one level, sanctions are working. Okay, the Russian oil is still flowing thanks to this shadow fleet that has grown, but it's had to grow because the discount they're having to sell the oil at is increasing. It's now about $25 a barrel cheaper for Urals oil, Russian oil, than it is for Brent crude. And that's because there's essentially only two big customers left for it. So that is, that's cutting the revenues that Russia is making from oil. And oil is absolutely central to the Russian economy. So they're making less money. Ironically, that means they're going to need more tankers like this to move more oil to make up the difference.
Two big customers, India and China. I mean, they're pretty big customers, I guess.
Absolutely
that's
right. And China, the most of all. India has been a very big customer. We recently did a trade deal with the US, and one of the conditions, I don't think inked, but in the Narendra Modi, Donald Trump deal-making, was that India said it would stop buying Russian oil. Now, we have to see how that plays out. Now, if that happens, that pushes the price of the oil down, places the Kremlin under pressure. It is under pressure, but this stuff is flowing out there today.
I've got a quick question. I almost don't want to reveal my ignorance on this one. But if they're doing it, can't they just send it around that way to China? Not.
When you say that way, we might have to be a bit use
got like
more exact nautical terminology.
Why does it have to come through the English
Well, if it's from the Baltic, so
it's got to come from that side.
It's got to come up. So you could go the other side. You can go round Scotland, and you could go down the Atlantic coast.
We need a map. This is calling for like an on-screen map.
At the moment, it comes out of the Baltic and turns left, as my salty sea dog pals
Why don't
say,
they just send it right and down?
Well, it would go up the North Sea and then down the Atlantic, but that's riskier, takes longer.
There we go.
That's why. And at the moment, frankly, they don't need to. Right under our noses, take the shortcut if there's no action.
Paul, great stuff. Thanks so much.
We should do the shipping forecast.
I should have been really, really bad at it. Paul's full report, scanning QR code, well worth doing so. It's really compelling stuff.
Now, there was an extraordinary twist in the Peter Mandelson story overnight. His lawyers have now said that the arrest that we saw on Monday was prompted by baseless claims that he was a flight risk. So Sky News understands that the police have been told he's preparing to leave for the British Virgin Islands.
Well, later today, of course, the PM will face Prime Minister's questions. Lunchtime, we'll have it live, as always, here on Sky News. And Lucy's here to tell us a bit more about all the politics. I mean, no doubt he'll be reminded of it all today, the PM.
Well, yeah, of course. And this week, I think it's quite interesting because the Prime Minister has quite a lot that he could celebrate. On Monday, it was Bridget Phillipson talking about send reforms. Yesterday, how to get the Crown Court backlog down. Today, energy bills going down. Actually, when you look at weeks that the Prime Minister has had from a policy perspective, he could come out today, you know, saying, look at what we're doing. These are the things that we're doing to ease the cost of living crisis. But again, he's going to be confronted. I think whatever happens today, somebody will get to him to talk about what's going on with Mandelson. As you say, a really extraordinary development yesterday. Mandelson denies that he was going to flee the country. But we saw that very public arrest, broad daylight, the cameras captured everything. And there is a case being made here that actually that was never going to happen.
And we are still expecting all the documents on Mandelson to start the slow release next month. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually, and I keep forgetting this as well, next month is actually this weekend.
Okay,
so
it was February.
Yeah, March.
It catches up on you, February.
Yeah, it really does. And so that
really
could be as early as next week. Could be as early as next week. But of course, you've got the complexities now. And this is the same with documents around the appointment of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to trade envoy roles, that because there are criminal investigations ongoing, some of those documents could be held back. I thought it was interesting. Michael Gove said on the Wrap on Sky last night that that's reprehensible and that MPs need to be pushing back against that. So this is just a story that is just going to keep unravelling. And for Keir Starmer, at the very least, whatever happens with these criminal investigations, at the very least, this is just a constant distraction. And it's plaguing his premiership. I don't think it's unfair to say that.
Lucy's absolutely nailed first day on mornings. Even plugged another show as well.
Yeah.
I know,
you've got
to tick those boxes.
So smooth. Yeah.
I hope the bosses are watching.
Here, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hope you are. She's good.
Thank you.
Coming back tomorrow?
I hope so. Yeah, I am actually.
They're
Yeah.
always watching.
There we go.
By the way, it's some more good news because February is the worst month. It's nearly over.
It's nearly over.
We agree on that. It's the worst month.
I know it's definitely. Well, it's short. That's the only good thing it's got going for it, I think. So yeah, probably. I think that's
And
right.
18 degrees as well. Can we just say 18 degrees?
Yeah. Oh, it's so nice. Yeah. I'm so happy about that.
Lucy, great stuff. Thank you.
Another thing I'm happy about is the next story we're doing. We actually squeezed it in at the end of last hour, but me and Wilf both felt we didn't do it justice, so we're going to do it again. It's all about chimpanzees and the fact that they get I was going to say so drunk, but they get drunk to the level that they would fail a human sobriety test and be stopped from operating heavy machinery.
Yeah, so a study of some chimps living in the forest in Uganda has revealed that they regularly eat enough fruit that then ferments in their stomachs to push them over most countries' alcohol test levels. Fantastic.
And I love the science bit as well. So, the drunken monkey hypothesis, right? This is an idea first formulated by a guy called Robert Dudley, who was a professor of biology at Berkeley and the co-author of this study, which was that our ancestors evolved to associate the smell of alcohol with ripe, energy-rich fruit, as in these guys here eating loads of it. And so that is why the little smell of, boozy breath would be a useful sign of, a fit and healthy monkey.
And it's a hypothesis that, if true, the Times report says if true.
If true.
So maybe it's not been completely proven. It will explain our own fondness for alcohol evolving over the years. Fantastic.
I love it.
I think there definitely could be truth in that. And it sort of gives us an excuse perhaps as well. What I also love, Drunken Monkey. It'd be a good name for a bar or a pub.
I bet there's a bar somewhere called Drunken Monkey.
Hit the Drunken Monkey later.
Yeah, defo. Also, I just want to have a shout out for a guy called Michael who's messaged us to say that this story comes as no surprise to Michael, who says he used to have field fares, which are a kind of bird, I had to Google that, in his garden, getting drunk on fermented apples. It's pretty common, apparently. There you go.
He just left some cider out.
I think it probably apples falling down from a tree, right? Rather than...
What, they just ferment on the floor?
Yeah, that's what happens, isn't it? Isn't that how fermentation works?
I don't think they just fall on the floor and ferment. Well, let's ask. Get in touch.
Michael, let us know. Yeah. We need more information
Otherwise,
on the field
would just make their own cider.
Coming up, we are going to be talking about female leadership and how well or badly it's going in FTSE 100 companies.
We'll be right back.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. Women continue to face greater scrutiny and unconscious bias at work, a government-backed report has found.
So this is really interesting data. It's come from the FTSE Women Leaders Review, and what the data seems to suggest is that there has been, a big move towards gender balance in boardrooms, more women on boardrooms over the last 15 years. They're still very underrepresented in key executive roles. And also, I guess we can discuss this with our next guest, Dr. Ronnie Savage, Chief Executive of Jomas Associates, which is a geotechnical and environmental engineering firm. I guess it's not just about box ticking and putting women around the board. Are these women being listened to when they're there, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I run an engineering company in the construction space, which is a space where the women are very, very sparse. And it is very difficult to work your way up to the top. So it's important that not only are we bringing women into the pipeline, but we're actually intentionally retaining them and keeping them so they can get into these leadership roles.
I guess there's the first point of underrepresentation when we look at the data, and then the extent to which women are being empowered and listened to if they are there. On the first point on underrepresentation, have we been failing on our sort of efforts and priorities? Have they been too focused on the boardroom and not focused enough throughout organisations?
We can't argue with data, can we? I mean, if you look at the FTSE report, it suggests that in the last 15 years, we've gone up from 9.5% in the boardroom to 43%. But actually, when you look at the top level in terms of CEOs, we've only gone up from 7% to 8%. So we're not moving quickly, are we? And that's been 15 years of progress. So
you talked about the pipeline, which I think is really interesting. Why do you think it is that women are butting up against, the glass ceiling, I guess? Is that because of, they have kids and then it's impossible to combine being a parent with these top jobs? Is it because of misogyny in the company? What do you think?
Combination of things. I mean, I don't like, sort of broad generalisation of people, because I think we're all unique and we're all very different. But the data speaks for itself. And I think the issue we have here is that, women come into the business and they face a lot of scrutiny compared to their male counterparts. They do generally, and also it's just the ability to retain those women in those positions. There are lots of different issues. You've got childcare. You work in an environment where potentially women are seen as, if you're too tough, you're too abrasive. If you're not tough enough, maybe you're weak. Dealing with all of those issues makes it very difficult for sort of women to stay in that at the top of their game.
What do we need to see change? Do there have to be just more hard and fast, arbitrary sort of rules enforced and targets, or is there a...
I'm not a fan of targets because I feel like it becomes a box-ticking exercise. So it's a bit like we had a target to get to 40% of women in boardrooms, and we've done that. But we haven't actually got women in the executive roles in these sort of FTSE companies. So I'm not a fan of that. I think companies need to be intentional. And I always say this to businesses: it's about training and education of the people at the very top, so you understand why are we trying to attract women into these roles. We're not box-ticking. We're not just trying to do women a favour. It is actually the solution to the problem that we have in our industry. We have, a country where 50% of the population is female, but we have CEOs at 8%. What's the reason for that, and why are we struggling to attract women? But we've got lots of vacancies in many, many sectors.
I was really struck when you said about women facing more scrutiny than men. The one I always think about is, like, for example, like a football commentator, right? If you have a bad female football commentator, everyone says, all women are bad at this. If you have a bad male football commentator, say, that guy's bad at this. Not that he's a representative for all men, right? I just wondered if you could talk a bit about your own experience as well, right?
Where do I
you
start?
work in construction. I mean, that, as you say, it's like, if you were going to pick any industry that is known as being male-dominated, it would be that one, right?
It would be. I mean, I'm the only woman in our country who looks like me, who runs an engineering business in construction the size of mine. There is a reason for that. It's not something I'm proud of. It's something I desperately want to change. But why is that happening? Why aren't we attracting more women into these spaces? And that's what we need to work on. And there are systemic issues that are preventing women from stepping up, being retained and getting to the top that needs to be resolved.
Like what? What is the top couple of issues?
Top couple of issues. Childcare is one of them. I've got 3 children. I've managed to sort of build my career whilst also building a family. So what we need to ensure is that we've got systems in place and processes in place that enable women to go to work, but also have children. But actually, I was speaking to somebody just earlier about it's not just about giving women time off, but giving men time off as well. Women enable the women to go into work. And it's just putting those processes in place and making businesses understand better what women need to enable them to excel.
Yeah, it's totally right. And you kind of need those kind of male allies as well, I think. And, the kind of husbands and the dads and the partners who are also willing to, do the drop-off or do the pick-up and all that kind of stuff too.
But you need people at work who understand the issues that you face as a woman. Because we've got so much talent out there. We've got women who are incredibly talented, and we're losing out on that pipeline because we're not attracting and retaining them with the right processes in place.
Dr. Ronnie Savage, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Really enjoyed
the
conversation.
conversation. Thanks for having me.
Coming up, we're going to be talking about changes to passports coming up, which could really hit dual nationals. It's worth keeping watch for this next one if you are involved in that. Right, we're talking passports next. There's a change coming in today that's going to affect lots of people, especially Brits who are living abroad.
From today, British dual nationals will no longer be able to enter the UK using their foreign passport.
So this is potentially slightly confusing, so just want to explain what's going on. So today we have the introduction in what's known as the Electronic Travel Authorisation Scheme. If you're a visitor entering Britain, you need an ETA. So this impacts dual nationals. So to board a flight, train or ferry, dual nationals now have to present a valid British passport or a certificate of entitlement, and that comes at a cost, almost £600. If you are a dual national living abroad without one, you could be denied entry if you don't have a British passport or if it's expired. And I think lots of people who could be impacted by this are children born abroad to British parents. They might not have a British passport yet. And before, you would have been able to use the non-British passport. You can't anymore. British citizens who already have a certificate of entitlement are also going to receive this, a new digital version of it. So that will need to be linked to your foreign passport. And this is all part of a move to a fully digital border system. That's the thinking behind it anyway.
Let's hear the views of some people who have been directly impacted by this. Joining us are Florence Garland, Zoe Deems and Alan Hunter, who have all been affected in different ways by this. Florence, you break it down for us first. You are, I think, a new British dual citizen, is that right? And are therefore affected by this?
Absolutely. So I had my ceremony back in November, but what we realised at the ceremony is actually that my certificate of naturalisation had a typo. The ceremony went along fine, but that certificate, in order for me to get a British passport, had to be amended. I sent the certificate of naturalisation almost straight away the day after, and it took over 2.5 months to get it back with the right name on it, which meant, and actually I have got to say thank you to my MP, who without her, I would probably still be waiting for that certificate. So that meant that my trip to France next week obviously cannot go ahead because I haven't got a British passport. And the reason is that my certificate of naturalisation was wrong in the first place. Otherwise, I would have applied for the British passport in November.
Oh, that's frustrating.
So I feel really, really let down by this, really let down. On the top of, obviously, I had no communication when I applied for British citizenship, no communication during the ceremony. And obviously, it's only my husband last week, 10 days ago, realised that I couldn't go abroad. I couldn't come back. I mean, I can go abroad, but I cannot come back as a British citizen. I was at Gatwick 3 weeks ago. I came back 2 weeks ago. There was no communication at Gatwick with the e-gate about this. And it didn't apply to me until now because obviously I had settled status.
I can really see the frustration there. And as you say, it's almost more difficult now you've become a British citizen than if you had settled status, which kind of feels like the wrong way round.
Absolutely.
Zoe, I want to bring you in now. Just talk a little bit about your own experience. What are you concerned about? What problem have you experienced?
So I moved to the UK when I was 6 years old and then was naturalised as a British citizen last year. During that entire process, which took over a year, not once was told about the upcoming changes. You know, spent close to £2,000 on the naturalisation certificate. Now I'm supposed to be travelling home to Belgium this week on Friday. Found out through the news 10 days ago that that's no longer possible as of today. So it seems that my trip will not be able to take place, unfortunately.
Again, very frustrating and sort of very unfair. I also wanted to get Alan's perspective because I think Alan's joining us from outside of the UK. How are you currently affected?
So first of all, I'd just like to say that our issue has been with communication as well. So we've heard nothing from the Home Office or from local embassies or anything. We obviously heard about the ETA changes, but nothing that would affect dual nationals travelling on international passports. So basically, we've been saving for a holiday for my wife, quite a special holiday for the family to go on a holiday. And she's a Danish national, so both our kids are impacted as dual citizens. And it's basically meant that we haven't been able to apply for or get passports in time. We heard about it on Instagram first, actually, from another social media person. And we applied immediately to the post office, actually the same day. And unfortunately, it coincided with Royal Mail delays and deliveries, which the English media or the British media has been covering, which has meant it's delayed our passport applications. We're probably not going to be able to make a holiday where we'll lose a holiday worth probably £15,000. So it's terrible. And both my children actually have official documents for, called a certificate of registration from the Home Office that actually proves their British citizenship. But the Home Office won't accept it. They only accept a passport or a certificate of entitlement. So we feel a bit stuck and misled. So.
I'm sorry. I mean, I think what's pretty clear talking to the three of you, actually, is that it's the comms in particular that feel like it's put all these people in this position. Zoe, what's your message to, I guess, the government today? Do they need to start telling people about this a bit more?
Absolutely. I think we're all aware of it now through the news. If they only just gave us a grace period or, delayed the change by a little bit, then that's all we need. I think that's what everyone's saying, that we're all happy to go through this extra thing that's being asked of dual citizens. We've already done most of the admin to get to this point. We're happy to go through the admin to get a passport now, but we just need a grace period because this has come in just absolutely out of nowhere, leaving us no time to get either the passport or the certificate of entitlement.
Florence, Zoe and Alan, thank you all for joining us. You've really shed a lot of light on the confusion around this, and much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's just one other bit of housekeeping that I did want to say as well. This has come into the morning's inbox from someone called Gavin Johnson, who says, no one's mentioned so far on the programme, which is very fair, that this doesn't affect Irish dual national passport holders. So there is a grace. If you are an Irish dual national, then you can still use your Irish passport to enter the rest of the UK. So quite important there.
Very important indeed. Now, the latest statistics on fly tipping have been released, revealing that there were 1.26 million cases of fly tipping, increasing by 9% from the previous year. The most common place for fly tips to occur was on highways, which contributed to 37% of incidents.
Well, let's talk to our reporter, Victoria Seabrook, who's in Woking for us. Victoria, this is the kind of thing that really winds people up, right? And when your local area is blighted by people just spreading junk around. What's going on where you are?
Exactly, it's an eyesore, it can be a health hazard, and it really just gets under the skin of people because of their sense of unfairness. I'm here at A1 Spare Parts in Woking, where they shred cars and vehicles that are caught fly tipping, as well as other car parts for recycling. Later we're going to be filming a van that was seized after it was caught fly tipping in Brent, and what you can see behind me is a big crane that pulls apart different pieces of cars and vans as they come in. And this is very much the image that the government and local councils want you to see. They want you to think that they are cracking down on waste crime, they're getting tough, and if you're caught, this is the kind of thing that might happen to you. But as you just said, the stats show that actually cases are going up, and in reality, thousands of people every year are getting away with it. Now, we've seen in the last year or two so many reports, and Sky News has consistently been reporting on waste crime, these huge dumps, often of several thousand tonnes in the countryside. But there's so many everyday incidents, like you say, Sophie, that just wind people up. We were out filming in Brent a couple of days ago, which was once the fly tipping capital of England, an unenviable title. They've been trying to crack down, increasing enforcement and so on. But what campaigners say is that maybe some councils are making progress, but in many cases they're just falling behind. And that's, I think, why we've seen this just outpouring of public frustration that their countryside is changed so dramatically, streets in towns as well. So as I say, this is the kind of shredding apart vehicles, this is the image the government wants to project, but in reality the figures show things are going in the wrong direction.
I can't imagine much fly tipping is cars, though. But maybe I'm wrong with that. What is the punishment for fly tipping currently? If you just dumped an extra couple of bags where you shouldn't, what would be the punishment?
It sounds like you're trying to work out if you should get away with it or not.
I'm not asking for a friend.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of vehicles aren't fly tipped, but if what teams like Brent do and other councils, enforcement officers, if they find waste that's been dumped, they comb through it looking for clues, and often they can work out where it came from. They can find pieces of addresses, and so even if it wasn't you that disposed of the waste, you paid someone else to take it away. The onus is actually on the person who produces the waste to make sure it's disposed of correctly. So if someone comes and offers to take away your waste a little bit below the going rate, that's normally a sign that they're probably not they don't have the licence to pay to dispose of it in landfill, and actually you could end up having to pay the fine, the fixed penalty notice, and that can vary. The government says that it's unlimited. In reality, it's often a few £100s, which if someone's doing this on a consistent basis, campaigners saying is not much of a deterrent, and it doesn't seem to be, given that the numbers are going up.
Victoria, thanks so much. Look out for that crane. Be careful. Were you not thinking about that? I was.
I get worried. It did look pretty, it's true. Time now to have a look at the weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
The mild theme will continue this week with rain and strong winds at times. It's wet in the north and west now, while the mainly dry south has some fog, locally dense. That fog will lift this morning and there'll be some brightness for central and eastern England, best in the southeast. The rest of the UK will be rather cloudy with further rain. Most persistent over Scotland and Northern Ireland. Meanwhile, Ireland will turn more showery by lunchtime. It'll be even milder than recently, with a high of 18 Celsius possible in the sunny southeast.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Really looking forward to this next conversation we're going to have. It's with the CEO of driverless car company Wave. It's one of the UK's leading tech success stories, and we'll be talking about that future of driverless cars coming up next.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
There's been some pretty unbelievable progress when it comes to driverless cars, and you could be getting in a driverless taxi, sitting in as a passenger as early as this year in the UK.
Yeah, in London specifically, and Wave, the leading UK-based company on this, is celebrating a big fundraising round today. They've raised $1.2 billion, valuing the company at $8.6 billion. And to talk about all of it with us is the CEO and co-founder of Wave, Alex Kendall. Alex, very good morning to you. And congratulations on this significant milestone and fundraising for you, because it's a competitive space and you're fighting against massive foreign competitors. One thing is the money you've raised, one thing is the valuation, but you've attracted Microsoft, Uber, Nvidia, Mercedes, Nissan, big kind of players in the space to this funding round. You must see that as a big vote of confidence in your technology.
Well, isn't it fantastic? I mean, we started working on this a decade ago, saying that the approach the industry was taking was one that was going to struggle to scale. And actually, there's a different way by building an AI that's got the intelligence to drive any vehicle anywhere. And this is a very contrarian approach a decade ago. But today, it feels like the industry is starting to rally around this next generation approach that we've pioneered. And we've got, as you mentioned, some of the biggest technology giants and 3 of the 10 largest car companies that are now backing us on this mission.
That said, your competition is fierce. In London specifically, you'll be facing off against Google's Waymo. Obviously, they're enormous. Baidu, the Chinese company's Apollo, again, enormous. In the US, there's also Tesla, who are competing in other places. You're still much smaller than those players. What's your edge?
Well, look, I think the last decade has been about building the right technology strategy, and I think that's something that we've been able to show some world firsts. We've built the first AI driver capable of driving in over 500 cities zero shot. We've driven in Europe, Asia, North America, and shown that this AI can drive around the world. And we've been the first to put language models and world models on a car. So some great AI breakthroughs have been built here. But now we're moving into commercialization. And there are 3 different models that you could commercialize autonomy with. Of course, you can build your own cars. You could operate your own fleet. But that restricts you to only your own brand's cars or city-by-city fleet rollouts. We've chosen a 3rd business model, which is also a contrarian approach to commercialize this technology, which is licensing the tech. And that means that we can license it to any fleet and manufacturer around the world, and that gives an opportunity for a much larger scale of deployment. So I think that we're not only is this a differentiated technical play, but also a commercial play that lets us deploy this technology with car makers like Nissan, or on robotaxi services like with Uber this year.
I have so many questions about this, right? So just to be really clear, from this year, I could get on my phone, on the Uber app, and order a driverless taxi in London.
That's right. We're going to start with supervised robotaxi trials this year in London, and we're actually announcing that we're going to grow it to 10 cities around the world. And then from next year, you can buy a car and have this AI in a car you own with partners like Nissan.
And there's going to be a lot of people who'd be worried about the safety of this, right? You know, you might not be someone who is comfortable ordering your own driverless car, but you could be a driver in one of these cities who sees a driverless car and feels very, very scared and worried. Like, what reassurances can you give people that this is actually safe to do?
Well, that's what we've been working on for the last decade, on British roads, learning how to drive in a safe and responsible way. We've been working with regulators. We helped the government pass new legislation to legalise autonomous driving and set a very clear threshold that this technology needs to drive in a way that's...
So is it safe?
So it's expected to be safer than a safe and competent human driver. So this is technology that will never be impaired or distracted. And unfortunately, every 20 minutes in the UK, someone's hurt or killed on British roads.
So it's safer than people, is what you're saying, basically.
We can build a safer driving experience, that's right.
I think this is important to clarify, though. I think you're saying it is expected to be that. It's not there yet. Is that fair?
That's right. We're still developing the technology. So the trials this year will start supervised by a safety operator.
So a driver in the car,
system.
basically.
That's right. And then we're going to be really quickly working towards the milestones needed to operate driverless with a vehicle that has no driver in the vehicle. And to do that, we need to integrate into vehicles that are capable of going driverless with the right architecture on board. We need to work with regulators to put in place the pathway for this. And we need to present the evidence that shows that it meets that safety threshold that I just described, better than a safe and competent human driver.
I guess the other question I've got is the holy grail when we get there. I mean, there's obviously a long transition period, or maybe a bit faster than we expect. Once it's here, will the cost of travel be much lower for us all? I mean, there's the plus and the minus. The cost should be a lot lower, but if you're an Uber driver or a taxi driver, you're probably fairly worried.
I mean, there's so many benefits that autonomy can bring. We talked about safety, but also making transport more efficient. You can, of course, cars today, I think on average are utilised 3% of the time. So there's an opportunity for cars to do more work for us. And essentially, this age of autonomy we're moving into is all about leveraging embodied AI in the physical world for us to delegate tasks to it and to give us more leverage so that we can spend time on what we want to spend on.
I guess Will's point is an important one though, right? Because Uber drivers or all the different firms you can list, Bolt, Hail, et cetera, a lot of people work in these jobs, and it also gives people flexible work, right, to fit around other jobs that they have if they're on low incomes or around family commitments. I mean, it could have a big impact on the jobs market, right?
That is true, but today's jobs are not going to be the same as tomorrow's jobs. And actually, we've also built a company right here in King's Cross in London with 1,000 people, with over 1,000 people, with jobs ranging from high-skilled machine learning science that's pioneered this technology to our whole team that operate this business.
Yeah, but probably not the same skill set as an Uber driver, right? Who might have childcare commitments and is like doing 3 hours, in the evenings to supplement salary.
We've got loads of parents at Wave, and I'm really proud of the diverse team we've built. But you're right, there is going to be a changing skill set, and I think autonomy and AI is a next generation tool. These are intelligent machines that we can use to advance what we spend time on, and specifically for driving. It helps free up this time and give a safer and more accessible driving experience to people.
Alex, before we started, you said we should come and do one. So are you brave enough?
I'm up for it. I actually am. I'll be honest, I think I trust it more than most drivers, to be honest.
Can we come and do a segment?
100%. You'll be surprised how quickly it feels very normal, how quickly you can trust and enjoy the technology. Please come.
Would you rather sit in the back of one of Alex's self-driven cars or me driving?
I reckon you're quite a safe driver, actually. Don't you think?
I think. Well,
don't you think? I reckon he's.
Now we're tempting fate. Yeah. We'll do it in the machine.
Well, so we can even
know who to blame.
You can even personalise the driving style. So our AI allows you to talk to it. We've got a technology called Lingo that lets you talk to the AI and ask why it's doing what it's doing, or ask it to drive in the way that you want. Of course, within the bounds of safety.
Yeah, exactly. Don't say, don't really fast and dangerous. Let's not
Alex,
do that.
we're out of time. Thanks so much for joining us. Congrats on the milestone reached today at Wave. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Look forward to the drive.
You sort of look forward to it, yeah. Thanks very much for that. We're basically out of time.
Well, it just blows my mind, all the advances in AI.